and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March 24th, 2014 Board of Commissioners meeting. As always, we will start with public participation tonight. I remind you that the public participation in the beginning of the meeting is for those of you, it's offered as a courtesy for those of you who can't stay through the meeting to make your comment at the appropriate time or the end of the meeting. And we have a 5-minute rule. So is there anyone who would like to come up and give public comment at the beginning? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Oh, okay. Thought you were sitting down, Jim.
Hi. Jim Schneller, St. David's. Thank you. I'm sorry to bring this up ahead of time, but I don't think there'll be public comment at the actual agenda item. I'm here about the possible redevelopment of the Veterans Park. I wanted to point out that apparently there have been many costs incurred, and they apparently have been done without the typical procedure of the board or township. In other words, there's been money spent for a study, for meetings, and now apparently for a design, whereas the only agenda items ever put out before the public have been for a renaming. If you look at the agenda, if you look at the minutes, it's all about a renaming. And I'm very surprised and I'm somewhat displeased because I'm a local resident nearby the park, and I object to the fact it's being considered in any but a rudimentary way. With apologies to whoever's here to give the presentation tonight, I understand that there's thoughts about removing the berm, which is a wonderful deterrent to traffic noise. There's actually a feasibility that 20 or more trees and shrubs could be removed. Those shrubs have had a tough time getting used to that spot. The ones that are left have done an amazing job and are coming into their middle age. I don't think that we should just think of mowing over what is a beautifully designed park. And another objection of mine would be the fact that the donors of the park weren't brought into this process, whereas the park was put together in somewhat of a charitable and community-minded manner. Of course, this is with all due respect for the veterans, and I finally would like to pose the question, is there a plan afoot to ultimately replace the current veterans plan, the veterans memorial, to move it piecewise or otherwise? Can I ask for an answer?
No, there is not.
And also, just to get this off the table, there is an agenda item. I don't wish it to be removed from the quick agenda, but I object once again. This will be my 4th year that I strongly object to any condoning or funds, especially being used for a Harry Potter camp. I don't think witchcraft has a place in modern society. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any other public comment? All right. I'd like to announce that we had an executive session immediately preceding this Board of Commissioners meeting, March 24th, 2014, and all commissioners were present except for Commissioner Nagel, and we discussed matters of litigation and personnel and real estate. Okay, next is the consent agenda. This is a long list, as you can see tonight, a long list of items that are perfunctory in nature. They don't ordinarily require much debate or discussion or explanation, so we pass them all at once. However, before doing so, we give an opportunity for members of the board or members of the public to take anything out that someone might think needs more discussion. And so I'd like to give that opportunity now. Okay.
I'll move the approval of the consent agenda.
We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the consent agenda passes by motion by a count of 6-0. Next, we have a few recognitions, and I'm going to come down to the podium. First, we are going to recognize a former member of our CARFAC, Jim Bowes, who passed away this year. And I'd like to invite up Jim's family, his wife Leslie and his 4 boys, and the members of the CARFAC who are here, and Bob Tate, our Human Resources Director, who works with CARFAC. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and read the plaque first, then I'm going to ask anybody from CARFAC who'd like to say a few words, and then I'm going to say a few words. So first, this is a plaque that the township is presenting to the family tonight, and it reads, Jim Bowes, in grateful recognition of his service as a member of the Citizens Audit Review and Financial Advisory Committee, Radnor Township will forever be thankful for our time with Jim and his leadership, unwavering commitment to honest, thoughtful, and fair contributions on behalf of our community during his time with the committee. So here is the plaque.
Hi, my name is Mark Blair, and I'm the current chair of CARFAC. I had the privilege of getting to know Jim through our time together on the committee. From the beginning, I was impressed with his grasp of municipal finance. And Jim stepped up and offered to volunteer to lead our group through perhaps the most difficult project to date, unraveling the OPEB situation and formulating recommendations that the board could consider to resolve it. His sense of humor helped get us through the countless meetings that were involved in that project. Jim was a stand-up guy, and I miss him. Thank you.
I would just like to say I was a friend of Jim's and an admirer of Jim's, and Jim, in thinking about it, was like the perfect role model for a public servant in Radnor, because he was so valuable to us as a community in that he shared his incredible expertise, which was so useful and so germane to what we needed in the last couple of years, and he shared that so freely and so generously. But it wasn't just that. He did it with a sense of humor, his great personality, his great way with people. So he made the work fun. I mean, he made it fun to work with him, and the CARFAC and the work with us was actually really enjoyable. And I say that that's the perfect role model for public service, because you know, you're giving your time, you're away from your family, you're not getting paid. These are often very challenging and controversial items that you're dealing with. And why do it if it's not fun? Why do it if you're not getting a great satisfaction out of working with your neighbors to solve problems together? And he was really king at doing that. So, you know, he is the role model for all of us. If you haven't had the opportunity to serve publicly in Radnor yet, I would encourage you to follow his lead, because he did it right. So.
I just want to thank everybody. You know, you guys were great. He didn't just pretend to enjoy your a friendship and collegiality. He actually did enjoy meeting all of you, and he really did enjoy his participation in CARFAC. So we feel so honored, and we're so delighted to be here, and thank you so much for thinking of us.
Thanks for your dad's service. Thanks for your dad's service. Sorry. Thanks for your dad's service. Sorry. I don't know.
Okay, next we'd like to do some recognitions of the Radnor Township School District. And I see some representatives sitting in the back, so I'd like to call up Eric Zajac, who's the president of the school board, Lisa Borowski, who is the chair of the facilities committee, Bert Blackburn, who's director of transportation, and I'm really sorry I don't know the fourth gentleman. Dr. Kelly, I'm sorry. I haven't met you yet. It's very nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you also.
So tonight we have this plaque to give to the school district because, let me read it first and then we'll present. Radnor Township's Award of Appreciation is hereby granted to the Radnor Township School District in appreciation of the coordinated efforts and leadership throughout the severe winter season. We commend the Radnor Township School District Board of School Directors, Administration, Facilities and Operations Department, staff, and work crews for their tireless efforts and collaboration with Radnor Township.
Get to this guy. Can I say one word?
Absolutely. So Dr. Kelly would like to come up and say a word.
I just would, on behalf of the school district, administration and staff, all of our faculty, the school board, our parents and our students, thank and commend the township. I believe that what occurred this winter was very challenging, but it also presented a great opportunity for the school district and the township to collaborate and to show that together we can make great things happen and work together for, most importantly, the safety of our students. So on behalf of the district, we thank and commend you as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're very lucky in Radnor that we have the same geographic borders for our township and our school district, and so synergies like this really work out when you need it most, which we really did this winter. So thank you again for all your efforts and for the coordination.
Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, we would like to take a moment to do a commendation of merit for one of our officers, Officer Michael Fischer. And Superintendent Collarula is going to come up here to present, and we'd like to invite his wife and children up as well.
Sure, that would be Sarah, his wife, and then Lily and Eli, his two children. In fact, here's Mike Fischer now. We had a little conversation earlier, and he introduced me to his son, who's 8 years old. And he said, Eli, this is the chief. He's the one that runs the department. And he says, my son thinks that I run the department. And I said, Eli, your father really does run a department. I just sit down most of the time, and he does all the work. I'd also like to acknowledge we have over a dozen of Mike's brother and sister officers that are here, many on their own time, to acknowledge one of their fellow officers being recognized here. And you kids should be very proud of your father. He's a great officer. He's one of our go-to people. He does a great job. And he also trains some of the newer officers, and he's somebody that we can really trust. And the reason we're here today, and this happened actually September 29, 2013, Mike was assigned a call relating to a criminal mischief, harassment, and a stalking incident, which are very, very serious and scary charges. And when Mike got this information, he was very tenacious in his investigation. He got search warrants, did what he had to do to identify a suspect. Not only did he identify a suspect, he actually brought that individual in here, read that person his Miranda warnings, and through his expertise, he was able to get that person to give a confession and admit to committing those crimes. And that individual was charged with a felony. Because of his persistence, his intelligent act of police service, we're honored and privileged to award Mike with a commendation of merit, which will go in his file. And congratulations, Michael.
Thanks, Chief.
No. Actually, I would.
Go ahead, sure.
Real quick. Just real quick, this was an incident that I was totally unversed in. I just want to thank Sergeant Smith, because without his experience in detective work and being able to decipher the numerous numbers that you get as a result of one search warrant on a cell phone tower, pinging towers and so forth, I would not have been able to continue my investigation. So he is the main reason that I was able to solve the crime. So thank you, Sergeant.
Okay, next we will have a presentation from Simone Collins, Landscape Architecture, and they're going to give us the concept design for the Veterans Park Planning Project. So if you could come on up, and how are you?
Good evening, and thank you very much for your time. this evening. Tonight, I'm going to go through with you a very brief presentation to summarize the work that we've done with the Park Board and also the veterans over the last several months. We started this back in December with a brainstorming meeting with the Veterans Group, and also the Park Board have progressed over the months. Last week, we gave a presentation to the Park and Recreation Board, which you're going to see what we presented to them tonight. In terms of the location, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's on Route 30, and as you know, Route 30 is a busy road. We're sort of in the middle of the block between Chamounix and Aberdeen Avenue, so we don't have a street crossing there. You can see the American Legion Post is almost across the street from the park. The existing park plan, I'm sure you're familiar with it, has a large berm between the park and the street. It's a busy street, and the berm does act to buffer the noise and the cars going by, the visual nature of the cars going by. You can see the walk layout. There's an existing fountain, which our understanding is hasn't worked well for a number of years and is planned to be removed. There's a small 9/11 memorial on the right-hand side of the park as you're looking at the slide. And there's some benches and some seating areas in the park. A small playground to the left there you can see. And also a big function of the park is stormwater management, as you know. That function will not be diminished, hopefully, through BMPs and other means we can enhance the stormwater function, stormwater infiltration function of the park when this goes into final design. When we did a brainstorming meeting with the Park Board and vets, we came up with goals of honoring the veterans and also educating people who go to the park about the contribution veterans have made, and that whole interpretive program has yet to be really developed in detail, and that would be in the next phase of design. To create an inviting park, an attractive park, to add to the beauty of it. We understand that most people who go to the park aren't going to be going to see the Veterans Memorial on a daily basis, but when they go and bring their kids to play there, they hopefully, and the kids will learn as a byproduct of going to use the park, something about the Township veterans and why you have chosen to honor them. The existing conditions, I mentioned, it's a busy street on Lancaster. There's a pedestrian entrance on the back, on the southern end from Midland Avenue that's heavily used by the neighborhood. There are a number of mature trees. You have programs there during the summer, concerts, some movie nights, those types of things. And then some of the concepts you see in the lower right hand of the slide was to use signage. There's a marble obelisk that the township has that we're going to incorporate in the design. The idea maybe for a small gathering space. We looked at water in the park. We looked at a lot of different things through the design process that came up. And we came up with 3 initial concept designs. I won't describe each of these, but all of these were fully vetted with the park board and members who came and the staff. And we went through these and sort of took the best from all of these and ended up with the concept plan that we have to present to you tonight. And I'll describe this quickly, and then we have some sketches that probably just show it better. We're keeping most of the berm on the two, off the center, we're opening up the berm, so we have a more prominent visual presence for this park. I mean, it's a park now you go by, you really don't even know it's there. And we thought if this is going to be a successful memorial or a successful honoring of the veterans, it needs to be visible from the street so that people who never physically go to the park will drive by it and understand this is a Veterans Memorial Park. So we've opened up the berm, but most of the berm remains. We've also given options for how people can get to the park or by the park. Presently, the walk goes into the park only and then comes out. We thought a street presence was very important, so we've shown a sidewalk along Lancaster Avenue as There exists a sidewalk along most of Lancaster Avenue. However, if somebody wanted to get into the park from either end, the walk still goes, sort of dives into the park so they can get away from traffic if they want to walk that direction. We show the obelisk here at the center of the park, and you'll see a sketch of that in a minute. And then there'd be a couple of steps that you'd step down into a slightly lowered area that we're calling an amphitheater. It's just a large plaza that could be used for events on an occasional basis, but on a daily basis, we've been careful to add trees to the southern side so you get shade in the park. So if somebody wanted to walk over there and have lunch or sit there and just enjoy the day, they could do that. So amphitheaters are often designed, and we have to remember the main use is on a daily basis, so they have to be pleasant spaces. And the size of this, it's about 30 feet across. It's not very large, so we're very conscious of the scale of this also. And then the rest of the walk system basically conforms or ties into the existing walks. The playground, working with Tammy, is due to be upgraded, and then we also have ideas for some of the brainstorming from the community was to do a timeline through the walk with insets perhaps in the paving denoting certain events either in township veteran history or the major conflicts the United States has been involved with in terms of the role veterans have played in those. If we look at a cross-section, you can see the elevation change. Here's the street, the sidewalk, again, the berm that remains opened up in the center, the idea for the obelisk, American flag, and then the 5 service flags, and then it goes back up, relocated 9/11 memorial here. So this just gives you the idea of the general changes in elevation. This is a sketch, sort of a bird's eye view showing what the concept would look like with the words Veterans Park, Radnor Township, on facing walls that sort of hold the berm up, act as retaining walls now, and I think all the other elements are sort of self-explanatory. And this is just a little closer view. So, another element that was added to the park was the idea for an eternal flame. Again, this is still a concept design, so how the details of this will be worked out are to be determined. We haven't made final material selections. The interpretive program I mentioned to you still has to be worked out. So we feel we have the elements in place, probably in the approximate locations. We think this is a good starting point to really look at the design. We've had a lot of discussion with staff and the park board and the veterans folks, Mr. Madden's here tonight, of course, about what the material should be. So that all has to be determined. This is a sketch from the manufacturer of the playground upgrade that we were given by the Parks Department that would be added to the improvements. In terms of design costs and construction costs, we're at about $1 million. Our understanding is that this is going to be money that's all going to be raised independent of township funds. So that's to be determined. The $1 million number is conservative in that we think we can do it for a lot less, but if we were able to, depending on how fundraising goes, one idea is perhaps to have a maintenance endowment so that there could be money that would come from the interest from that endowment yearly to maintain this park, which would take it off the township maintenance rolls over time. So that could be a good thing. So those details still have to be worked out, and that's where we are. So I'd be happy to try to answer questions or respond to any comments that you have.
When and if this all gets finalized and approved, what is the time frame for how long it would take to get this implemented?
It would probably take about 18 months from when you said, let's start on the detailed design to when it was built and in the ground. That would be optimistic. It could be a little longer depending on permits, et cetera.
Right, okay.
There was a fountain constructed in the park when it was created a few years ago, and that's not in your plans.
Correct. We were told by township staff that that fountain was problematic, it didn't work properly, and that regardless of the plans for this park, that it was slated to be removed because it was a maintenance problem.
Okay.
Any other questions? I see, oh, go ahead.
Would we move the other Wayne Memorial Site to this location?
That's not my understanding, no.
Is there, why not move that?
I think-
Is there a difference, or what, isn't that a memorial site there?
That's a memorial site, correct.
This is a veteran site. That's a site to deceased veterans. This is a site dedicated to veterans. Therein
Correct.
is the difference. Two
Correct.
distinct functions.
Correct.
But the big difference is that's in the center of Wayne and is properly located.
I'll say, to me, one of the most exciting features is the visibility for motorists, people driving by. You know, when you open up those two walls and make it prominently defined as a veterans park, so that, you know, people in our community, as they drive by it every day, not only does it's a reminder that there's a beautiful park back there, but that it's in honor of our veterans, and, you know, maybe that sparks conversations for even people who never set foot in the park, that their attention is drawn to the fact that this is something our township cares deeply about enough to dedicate a park to. Now, I see in the audience we have some representatives from the Legion Post. Mr. Madden is back there. Would you like to say anything?
Yes, I would.
Okay, please come up.
First of all, I think it's important to tell you, and I've thought about this the last couple of days, how I was the spark that tried to bring this to our attention in the township. But all of you here are the torch carriers. Since the first moment I worked with your personnel, the Park and Recreation's Bob Sinkowski, the township manager, and of course the board, when we went through the evaluation of whether we should do this and rename a park, I couldn't be more proud and honored by dealing with this township in what you have done to recognize the importance of veterans in this community and what they have done over the last 100 years or more in bringing forth their services in honor of their country and their community. And it's very important that you all understand what you are doing here, and the importance of it is to some of the veterans that you see here that are still viable and living and proud to be part of this township. So whatever we do from here, you have our support, as you should have. We will be very engaged in helping to raise the necessary funds, along with your township manager, who is very vocal in trying to make sure that we're all working together to make it happen. And hopefully 6 months from now, we will give you a progress report, and hopefully it will be positive. And we thank you very, very much for the honor of being veterans in this community. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have, do we have any more comments on this? All right, well, thank you very much for coming. Oh, Cheryl, would you like to come up?
Hi, my name is Cheryl Tamola. I live on Midland Avenue. This is the extension of my backyard. Okay, I'm sorry. My name is Cheryl Tamola. I live on Midland Avenue. This is behind my house. I have a couple of points to make. One, I was the first spark, before this spark, to have the park be there. Bill was involved in this. I planned the War Memorial for the past 25 years with my civic organization in the center of Wayne. So I don't want anybody to think that by making suggestions about this, I'm showing any disrespect to veterans. But I really feel that the important thing for the community, one of the things when this was designed in the first place, was to remove the interface between pedestrians and the traffic on Lancaster Avenue there. between St. David's Road / Chamounix and Pembroke, actually between Aberdeen, people get up quite a head of steam. And it would be lovely to be able to continue doing what happens now and to be able to go indent a little bit on the sidewalk. I know that everyone says that there are sidewalks already existing on Lancaster Avenue, but if we have a chance to improve pedestrian safety, I'd like to see it happen. So, though I love this, I think it's pretty. It's going to be very nice, and I'm glad that there's going to be something more impactful than the one in Wayne for veterans. But I think that there should be more thought put to bringing the sidewalk off of Lancaster Avenue and continuing the way it is now than what is done now. And I'm pleased that they're going to improve the child's playground. And I hope they don't take out all the trees that have been growing there all this time. That, at the where the Taco Bell was and now there's a Rite Aid, those trees were just getting big enough that we demanded when Taco Bell went in, and then they took them all down when they redeveloped it. So I hope that in the future, any redevelopment of this park doesn't remove the trees that were already planted there. And I really would like to see a nod to the pedestrians who use this park by making it safer and more soundproof than it would be if it were opened up. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Is there anybody else that'd like to make a comment? Okay, thank you very much for coming in and for all your work on this and your support on this. Next, we are going to hear about some more plans, this time plans for the Radnor Memorial Library building. And we have some representatives here from Kimmel Bogrette Architects, and also I think Kathy Mulroy is here, who's the director of the library, and she will fill us in and give us an update on the Board of Trustees and their position on this project so far. Hi, Kathy.
Hello. I want to thank, let me get away a little bit. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and to introduce Martin Kimmel, who has done the feasibility plan from Kimmel Bogrette Architects. With me tonight is Rick Eckstein, who is the chair of the library's Building and Grounds Committee, Helen Grommel-McGrain, who is the vice president of the library board, and Pat Hartel, who's a member of the library board. Last summer, the township and the library partnered to undertake a feasibility study of the current library at its current location at 114 West Wayne Avenue to find out what might be possible to do on that skinny little plot of land that we have and not lose any parking. What we were looking for is renovations and possible additions to the existing structure. In addition to the feasibility process, the township requested a study of the existing 34-year-old HVAC system in the building and a determination of whether there were any hazardous materials in the building that might stand in the way of any kind of changes. The library received the final report last week, and while we're still absorbing the rather thick study, it's about yay big, we believe this study has been extremely successful. Number one, it found that the building was structurally sound. There were questions about that. And amenable to addition. We found that there was no hazardous materials in the library. Yay. We found that replacing of the existing 34-year-old HVAC system is essential, regardless of whether we do anything else to that building. We determined that it is possible to add between 3,000 and 7,000 square feet on one level, meaning we don't have to put additional staffing in, at that Wayne property, maintain the parking that we have, and still meet setback and other zoning requirements. We're excited that the suggested expansion renovation would result in more people space in the library, more space for residents to gather, to interact, and to work and study in varying settings that they have requested and would use. And it will make the library much more visible, accessible, and inviting from West Wayne Avenue and much more visible from South Wayne Avenue. We look forward to working with this board, with the township staff, and with the residents of Radnor to make this vision a reality. If anyone out there in the audience happens to have some money or expertise they'd like to volunteer into this process, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact me at the library. We will be posting this study soon on our website. It's a rather huge file, as you can imagine, so we have to figure out how to get that up there. And I am pleased to introduce to you, I'm sure somebody you all know, Martin Kimmel from Kimmel Bogrette, who's going to show you the dazzling ideas that they have come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Bear with me while that opens. It's been my pleasure to work with Kathy and the staff and the board of the library and to see just how busy the place really is. I've been there and used it, but I didn't have appreciation for how well it's used and when. So it's been a great pleasure. So Kathy has alluded to several of the things that we do here. I'm going to hop over a slide based on that. But I want to share with you the exact process that we walked the board through, which is called master concept planning, and it's a process we developed to help nonprofits figure out how to do smart things, spend their money well, maximize their investment in community assets. And so we worked with the staff and board to develop a translation of their mission, which was really well articulated before we started, into a project kind of oriented mission. And that helps us keep focused on the big picture. And again, the result of this study is a big picture solution to quite a few problems. The second thing that we did is we took a lengthy opportunity to study the building and the site planning, and of course your local ordinances and whatnot in detail to see what was possible. The third thing we did is we took a real practical level programming, and Kathy alluded to the fact that most of what we're doing is about people space. Like right now, the building houses a substantial collection, and they don't need that collection to get larger. But people bump into each other. Different groups that maybe don't want to be right on top of each other have to be right on top of each other. We'll say teens and seniors as a for instance, or the adult and the children's library. So we're looking at making it a more dynamic living room space for the community to use in addition to all the great things that happen there already. Fourth thing that we did that we did is to develop an idea and concept of solutions that fulfill the mission, reconcile the constraints, and in this case reconcile is the best that we could hope to do, and then meet the programmatic need. And then ultimately, the board and their board and everybody will decide whether or what to implement down the road. So with that in mind, just a few moments about, if you don't know your vision statement and mission statement for your public library, it's up on the screen now, but it is well articulated, and the mission of the library to inspire lifelong learning, advance knowledge, and strengthen our community is alive and well there. And there's quite a few studies in just a recent article in the New York Times about how in 2002 the death of libraries across the country was pronounced as imminent based on the internet. And in this article, they've shown that libraries are now better, stronger, faster than they ever were in 2002, and there's more community participation. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of people that sort of think maybe now that I have high-speed internet, why would I ever need to walk into a library? Well, across the country, folks are finding that they're more popular than ever. Core values for the project that we explored include, most specifically, if you look at the building now in 1980, kind of I call it a bit of a shoebox. It doesn't jump out at you. You might not ever know it's there. If you didn't know it was there, it's not very welcoming. But to transform that, if possible, into a beacon of activity that will be welcoming to community of all ages. And then a real focus on collaboration over just the collection and housing of books. So information literacy, how to access and use information safely, how to work with the internet safely, are all things that were important to the library board and staff, and that we were asked to try to see if we could infuse that into the physical presence of the building rather than what they have now is more of a make-do experience for a lot of great things that happen. So with that, we did gather and we studied the existing building. As Kathy reported, we had an environmental study that investigated the details of that, and there's virtually nothing of concern there at all. The mechanical system was given a death sentence. It is well past its useful life, and we expect the replacement of it will result in operational benefits in both cost and energy efficiency and carbon footprint as well. Then, of course, the real puzzle is what to do with the site, because it is a challenge in many ways due to its shape and orientation and access points. Programmatically, I think there was a study some years ago that said you might need to add 30,000 square feet to get the library right. Well, in working with the staff and talking about the real needs and the real programs in the board and some of our own experiences, we were able to program a fully developed library at 30,000 square feet. The existing library is 24,000 square feet, so the net need there is a much more modest 7,000 square feet. I'm rounding up, of course, to get to that number. So that becomes something that you go, yeah, that's possible in that location versus, we would have to pick up and move at substantially much, much larger cost. And again, the overwhelming bulk of the square footage that you see there is people space and a little bit of back of the house relative to the whole operation. All right, so now I will focus on the challenge of the site. So here you see West Wayne Avenue, if you follow my cursor, and South Wayne Avenue, post office in the foreground here. Here's our library building, rather snugly up against the rear yard setback and the side yard setback. Interestingly enough, because of your well thought out business overlay district, there's actually room in the front yard to build two, which is what you encourage. There's a huge amount of traffic, obviously, that moves through the site to access parking along this edge. That also accesses parking and sometimes even parking here for well needed. But it's really well located, though, for pedestrian access, too, and that's very important. And one of the reasons the libraries, I think, maintain a position that they would want to stay in the center of Wayne. And so that's something that's very important. All right. So just to familiarize yourself a little bit with the base level of the floor plan, so we've sort of cut the roof off and zoomed in a bit. And here you find the existing library. There's stairs that come up from parking here. There's that terrace that maybe you've sat out and read. There's the vestibule, and then you come into what is really a vastly kind of wide open space with really almost no articulation between what would be children's library, what would be teen, as I mentioned earlier, and so on and so forth. Back of the house operations located here in the center bottom. There's a terrace that is little or never used, might be a better word, off of the west side of the building. And then the building has a partial lower level that a lot of folks enter in depending on where they've parked. Oops, there should have been another base plan, but we'll show that when we show the lower level. So what we did is we came up with 3 different solutions. We'll call them the Goldilocks solutions of the smallest, the biggest, and the middle of ways that we thought we could meet the programmatic need here. And in no particular order, Scheme 1 is actually the largest. So this is a little bit of a transformation here. All right, I'm going to go one more click. If you see that red line, that just appeared on the second part of the slide, that's a little bit dark. At any rate, that is the existing footprint of the building. So in Scheme 1, we are expanding toward West Wayne Avenue. We are expanding out over the existing parking to create the additional square footage that we need. And then we were actually removing the lower level where the public meeting room is in order to be able to have parking access only from the south side that would drive underneath the building, loop back out and park. So we still hit our parking count. We get a covered book drop, some of the sort of operational details that they need. You end up pulling the main entrance much closer to its access point where most folks are coming from on West Wayne. We create a new terrace, a new vestibule. We have an open plan, but with some articulation between department and department with Children's Library in the upper corner, community open space and cafe and reading area down the, I guess we'll call that the east side of the building. General collection in the middle, teen area located here, back of the house. So it's a pretty dynamic plan, and of course, if any of the project moves forward, there would be much more level of detail that you would go beyond a conceptual that would make a good deal of this subject to change. But what we were hoping to prove here is that it could be done. All right, so with that in mind, there would still be a lower level rear entrance, an elevator that you currently don't have, a stair and so on that would make it, from a staff perspective, controllable where the 2 entrances from front and rear kind of meet in the middle. So I think that's enough on that concept plan because I don't want to get us too into the weeds even for this meeting. Lower level to see how that's possible is here in the translation, and I'm going to give us the red line again. And so what we've actually done is we have removed that lower level, as I mentioned, to create parking, quite a bit of which is covered. Then we have also, because of our footprint that we've added over the parking, we're expanding the lower multi-purpose kind of level of the building as well. You have the Friends of the Library, which run a fantastic book sale and generate revenue, operating revenue for the library every year. Public entrance, book drop, new bathrooms. There's new bathrooms in both schemes. There's bathroom issues, as you might expect in a building of that age. So that is the high-level version of Scheme 1, which is this expand the footprint to the east and give yourself more parking. My directions are a little bit on the south. Okay, so we'll go to Scheme 2. So my Goldilocks version, this is the middle scheme. So you have the existing footprint of the building again, and then you have a more modest series of additions. All right, so I'll start first. Like Scheme 1, we're adding toward West Wayne Avenue and giving ourselves less front yard, giving ourselves a very popular terrace back, creating a much more prominent and accessible entrance with less ramp than you currently have now to access that children's library and so on. But what we've done here on the east side is we've expanded the building out over the parking. Okay, so you would literally drive in the existing drive lane, have parking spaces as you do now, and as that travels down, the addition is just a few steps up above the existing floor level to give you enough clearance that you would drive right under it and out the other side, and you would actually have parking below that. And so it's a fairly, I'll say, clever way to figure out how to get space on this site that actually is very feasible and works, keeps the parking count down, reduces the amount of site cost and site work cost as compared to Scheme 1 by a fairly substantial amount. The other things, back of the house, adult collections, teens and computers, as I said with the first scheme, are all sort of subject to change within this kind of big idea. But that's the idea for Scheme 2. We'll go to the lower level. All right. Here now we're improving the entrance, we're adding an elevator, we're fixing what is, the one code problem we have is the Friends area currently has sort of a dead end kind of situation that from a fire code perspective is not good, so we fixed that with this egress way over here. But we're otherwise more of a paint and paper and finish kind of thing on that lower level, so not spending a lot of money, but making a better catering kitchen. We pick up a conference room there by just reconfiguring some underutilized space. So not a bad way to go here. And from an operation perspective, if you go there a lot, the library would set up very similar to what it does now, but be kind of vastly improved in both square footage and that overall layout. And then option 1 was really our hedge, our budget hedge, which is what is the minimum that you would do that would be worth the trouble of doing anything at all and that doesn't mess with parking or anything like that. So you'll see it's a similar idea, but we have much less additions. So if you track my red line here, again, we're basically filling in the corner primarily and filling in the terrace. And so on, the parking and all that stays the same. And so this does not fully achieve the programmatic goal of the just under 7,000 square feet. Scheme 2 actually meets the programmatic goal almost precisely. And Scheme 1 actually was sort of highest, best use, the most amount of space you could put on the site, and therefore exceeds the base programmatic goal. Scheme 2 on the lower level is very much, in fact, it's identical to Scheme 3 is identical to Scheme 2 on that lower level.
What's the square footage on the top one?
The first one,
Yes.
bear with me, was about 33,000 square feet. I think it'll show up later.
So you were adding 7,000 on 2. How much are you adding on 1?
Well, I'll get to that, but it's much less. It's probably about 3,000 square feet, roughly, and change. And in the cost, I have that exact
On the
number.
maximum one?
The maximum one, we were adding over 10,000 square feet. All right, so questions on the plan, sort of big picture idea of how you would actually solve this puzzle. Anything besides that good question?
doesn't seem economical to pick up 3,000 square feet by doing the most expensive plan, underground parking.
Yeah, I think you misheard me. So on the underground parking, which is the biggest scheme, we're picking up about 10,000 square feet.
But that's only 3,000 more than the other plan that picks up 7,000 square feet.
Agreed.
Without underground parking.
Yeah. Yeah, I can sort of jump a little bit to the end. Our recommendation that shows up in the final report, and I believe the board's agreement, and Kathy, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're endorsing Scheme 2 as a general statement as being the best balance between the two. Fair? Did I use words I shouldn't use?
Depending on dollars, either the middle one or the smaller, depending on how much money.
Yes, assuming that we can afford level 2. That's a good way to add that. All right. So I will advance. So we were also asked to show, well, how could that look in the neighborhood? And so here you have a West Wayne Avenue photo, and you see some of the things. The building recedes a bit. This isn't even a particularly, you know, if you're down at closer to the intersection, you can sort of look right by the library. So this is as currently proposed, or as currently existing on one of the many snowy days this winter. And then here's a view of what it might be. All right, so what you see in this image is you see the addition that brings it closer to West Wayne Avenue and gives you a new entry, kind of grand stair up to the terrace. Duplicates, but makes in a little better orientation the terrace that you currently have. So your main entrance component is here. Your children's library is down here. The existing drive lane continues under, and this is where it goes under the building. And then this addition comes out over the parking. This is what I was describing to you. And that has, you know, a variety of components that are inside of the building. Looking up a little bit closer just to get a better perspective of that, you can get a feel. And again, this is pretty much exactly how the existing drive lane works now. But you're taking advantage of what is a lot of kind of underutilized space in the foreground of that in the previous photo. Oops. Okay, in really all of this area is where we pick up space, and then we pick up space along this front edge. All right. Kathy did allude, you know, if you're in the South Wayne lot, if you will, the library is sort of a distant kind of thought back there. There is opportunity toward the middle school to have a much stronger presence while achieving the other operational goals. So you feel this. So here you get a really good, strong, I think, feeling of how vehicular traffic would go right under. You still have parking all along both sides, as you do now. You've built this addition in the corner here, and then you've reskinned the existing building to achieve that. At the same time, we pick up space I didn't mention by kind of reorienting. All of our mechanical systems emanate from the basement now, which uses up a lot of space down there and uses up a lot of space to get air up. We would duct up high in those volumes and have a much more sensible way to manage that. A couple more images that we have. So if you're directly across the street on West Wayne Avenue, this gives you a better sense of, you know, like the street elevation, again, children's library. And when we talked about Beacon, you know, there's a substantial more element of glass and transparency, which translates into activity and so on. And in this day and age, somebody would say, well, is that an energy cost issue? And it's really not. Glass and glass technology and thermal breaks are such that that's not a concern at all, particularly on the heating side. And your orientation and shading there makes it not an issue on the cooling side. So you get a feel for the terrace, you get a feel for the main entrance, you can see the grade dropping off on the far left to where you would drive underneath the building. And then last but not least, a sort of feel of how it might be in the, you know, a winter evening, a little bit more lit up than what you would experience now. All right, and of course, as you have questions that I can come back at any time. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview. And what we try to do is to have total project costs. You think about these, you know, capital projects that you get involved in. You have the capital improvement cost, which is construction, say everything that would be on the bid sheet if you put the project out to bid. So it gets paid to the contract. And then you have a lot of non-construction but related costs to get the project done, from you know, a whole list in here of testing, inspections, and legal and fees, and IT, AV, furniture, fixtures, equipment. You have design costs and contingency that you need to carry. So what we're trying to provide for you is an all-in kind of cost for each of the schemes. So at this level, we're very conceptual, and so we build in contingency and smart thinking by giving a high-low range of what we would expect it to not be less than this much and not more than that much. So from a construction cost standpoint, for Scheme 1, we would expect that to be between $3.3 and $4.1 million, and total project cost would be just over $5 million. And I have to confess, that was the price for Scheme. Yeah, that was the big one. My bad. So that's the largest of the schemes, is this total of 4.1 to 5.2. What we believe is probably the optimal scheme, total project cost construction, of just about 2.4 to just under 3 million, and total project cost of just under 3 to 3.8, 3.9. All of this you'll have copies of as you need in the staff requests, so you don't have to remember anything. And then last but not least, the minimum option with the smallest additions has a construction cost of just under 1.7 to just about 2.1, and a total project cost of a little over 2.1 to 2.8, just under 2.9 million. So there's a fair amount of flexibility within the concepts to hit a fundraising goal or a fundraising success where, what is actually achieved. Lastly, from a project schedule standpoint, if you were to look at the project moving forward from a start date to be determined that says, yeah, we're going to pursue something, the design and approval process we would expect to take about 6 to 8 months from whenever that start date would occur, with about 2 months dedicated to bidding and award of contract, and then 10 to 12 months for construction. And that would all depend on certain phasing issues. One of the things that we'd ultimately have to develop in a more detailed design with the library is how long they stay. Do they stay the whole time? Is there a shutdown period? How you phase the construction? And more complicated things have been done, but there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it, which include the design concept that's chosen, as well as the library's ability to live in a construction site to the point where it doesn't make sense. True Dufferin Easttown Library, True Dufferin Library, I should say, went through a renovation that was pretty substantial and had some modest shutdown periods that are associated with it. So it's something you work through with some smart thinking on both sides of the table. And with that, that's my content for this evening.
Yes, did those numbers in all three scenarios, did they include the replacement of the HVAC system?
Yes, they did in all three.
Okay.
Thought I'd come up in case you had questions.
And the Board of Trustees is leaning towards scenario 2. That's
2 or 3.
2 or 3.
I'm sorry. Again, because, there's substantial dollars, and please understand that we only saw those numbers Thursday, so they're new to us as well. We were not really thinking we were going to come to you all quite this early in the process, but I think it's great because I think it's an exciting thing to see what's out there and what's possible, but how the phasing and how we're going to do it and where we lean. One of the things that the comment that Martin didn't make was 3 could grow to 2. You notice that 3 is exactly the same in the front of the building and taking over the terraces, and then the thing comes over the parking lot. So it's a possibility of doing it as a phased project, depending on the funding that's available. So that's something to think about, which we haven't, but like I said, we're kind of kicked out 1, because 1, we don't think everyone wants to come from South Wayne Avenue. And you couldn't get from the South Wayne Avenue parking lot to the front of the library building. There's not enough room. There's no sidewalk.
You mean by car or
by body?
There's no rear
I don't believe
entrance?
there's a rear entrance, but if you just wanted to get from the South Wayne lot to West Wayne Avenue. You'd have to go through the library around the building.
Oh, you mean not using the library, just
Right,
cutting through?
Right, and people do. I mean, people walk through, the middle school kids walk through like crazy. So we don't think that blocking that whole front of West Wayne Avenue makes a lot of sense. And also the idea of the excavation under the building makes me nervous, because I don't think we could be there during all of that. We want to minimize the closing. We want to minimize the disruption for users. We want to make it the best thing we can. So like I said, this is all like, we're just like kids at Christmas going, wow, the package is so pretty now, the detail.
Is the excavation under the building only in the more expensive of the
The most
three?
expensive one, yes.
So by not excavating and going with schemes 2 or 3, what are you losing? What space are you losing by not excavating?
We're retaining the meeting rooms and their current location. And the difference, as I understand it, between square footage is the middle scheme gains us about 7,000 square feet, 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. And the little one, the smallest one, gains about 3,000 square feet. Am I about right on that?
You're about right. And the largest,
It's like 10.
yeah, is actually closer to 12,000 square feet. So it's a substantial difference in total square footage and therefore total cost, and exceeds what was programmed.
And what are you putting, what would you put into that excavation, that underneath? Under
That was
the-
parking.
Just parking?
Yeah, and it's really not excavation. It's removal of the lower level that already exists, which is really not excavation in the digging sense of the word. It's taking out, what is that, meeting room, if you've ever been there?
Yeah, yeah.
And making that open air underneath of the building.
What about to the north of the meeting room, if you excavate? What would be there?
The way the building is built, that would not really be possible. To get even more space, is that what you're suggesting? Yes, because the building switches at some point to slab on grade, and then there's nothing really to hold it up. And so that I would deem to be not impossible, but infeasible to go farther north or west, or I'm kind of disoriented, it's north, yes. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right, I would love to talk about the library all night long, but we have a lot more on our agenda, so I thank you so much for coming and presenting. This is very exciting, and we look forward to working together to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we have another presentation. Tonight we have the Delaware Riverkeepers Network coming to talk to us about a joint grant application. And you must be John Nystedt.
Yes, glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So John Nystedt at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, here to talk about West Wayne Preserve. And it is a green stormwater infrastructure and a park project. And I'm here with Michelle Adams, engineer, and Jesse Forrester, landscape architect, and Maya Van Rossum is here also, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, the head of our organization. And Maya's been involved with the project from the very beginning. We'll be able to answer the history questions. The site is right along Conestoga Road and Radnor Trail, not far from Lancaster Ave, 7.8 acres. And after years of advocacy, then we were able to develop the conceptual design with Radnor input and community input. 2009 Board of Commissioners approval, and just last year, CVE engineers hired by Radnor recommended this project for implementation. So the next steps are fundraising and final design, permitting, and implementation. So the project goals, as I was saying, one is stormwater, one is parks. So capture the first half inch of stormwater and slow it, clean it, and infiltrate it. Alleviate erosion and flooding, eliminating existing stagnant water, restore the native plant community into a wooded wetlands, increase habitat value, and invite people into and involve them in the park. So there's the preserve at the bottom of the sheet there, and it has stormwater flows into it from 44 acres. So this is a stormwater management project that helps clean up the water from residential and commercial areas up to Eagle Road, Strafford Road, Doyle, Lantoga, and down Conestoga Road. So it's 44 acres, and it'll handle 83,000 cubic feet per storm. There is ponding there that does not get out, so there are some stagnant conditions, which cause mosquito breeding. There's a non-native invasive species problem there too, quite taken over. It's a degraded habitat. Even though one sees a lot of trees, a lot of them are non-natives. And there is dumped debris and soil mounds there. So there's some existing problems with it, even though when one drives by, one might not notice them. The site is not currently a great amenity or inviting to the community or to nature, but it could be. We can improve stormwater management and water quality while creating a public amenity, improving native habitat. So right now I'll introduce Michelle Adams, our engineer, to talk about the stormwater.
Thank you, John. Real quick, it receives about 44 acres, as John said, and right now there's a lot of fill and piles of old debris in the site, and the stormwater pipes bring the water to the site already. It's got the plumbing already there. So what we would hope to do is do some careful excavation to make shallow pools, not deep pools. The deepest ones wouldn't get more than 2 feet deep when they were filled. And they would be allowed to soak in, to evaporate. And there's an existing outlet that goes under the railroad embankment, old railroad embankment, the trail now, that would be modified to be a slow release. But the water for the first half inch would be held and allowed to soak in and infiltrate and extensively plant it. And we know when we plant them like that, the water evaporates well. Going the wrong direction. There we go. And so this is a little diagram done by Jesse's office that shows the concept not just of the park, but how the water would pond and then dissipate over a period of a day and a half. So it wouldn't be left with standing water for long periods of time, which is the condition now. Do you want to talk about the park, Jesse? Go one more. Oh, one more last thing. We're looking at capturing about 83,000 cubic feet with a half inch of runoff from these 44 acres. Provides a lot of storage that would be soaked in and infiltrated, but very importantly, we think it's going to be a good source of capturing pollutants, especially suspended sediments and pollutants coming off of the landscape that it's capturing. While there's not requirements yet for municipalities to be reducing their pollutant load as those evolve, this is a site that can be doing 13,000 or more pounds per year of total sediment. So it's a real workhorse in pollutant removal for down the road when you have to meet those requirements with DEP in your MS4 permit. The kinds of things we'd be looking at with the water, things like level spreaders, leaky pipes on the contours rather than pipes that shoot the water out. Some examples of built ones. Check dams, these are some from the Washington National Cathedral in DC. Ways to slow the water down and let the vegetation establish. And I'll let Jesse talk to the park master plan.
So one thing that we think is important, in addition to managing the stormwater and creating habitat, is to make this a place that people appreciate, that they feel invited and feel some ownership over. So we think that if people use this space and they find it to be a beautiful space, that it's going to be something that'll be maintained and valued over time. So just in general, you see some pathways sort of running the perimeter of the site. There's also a plan for some sort of a lookout that might come off of Radnor Trail, so that people who are walking along Radnor Trail kind of could take a walk down through nature, see some of the different habitats that we're creating and some of the different plants. Or if they don't feel like climbing down in there, they can at least step off into an overlook and just kind of see over that space and appreciate it. Okay, so here we're just highlighting what those, where those entrance ramps would be. There's a lot of grade coming down off of the trail into this site, so they would be sort of long, gradual ramps that roll down the side of the hill. And a lot of this space is wetland, so we're anticipating that boardwalks will be necessary for a lot of it just to keep people up out of the water. And then the remainder of the site might be on-grade paths made out of maybe crushed stone, maybe a stone that's a little bit more stabilized so that it can be accessible to people in wheelchairs. One thing that we think is important, bringing people into the site, is still keeping space between the public and some of the residential properties that are adjacent to here. So we're trying to keep a lot of the existing vegetation right behind these nearby houses and keep the pathway away from them just so that nobody feels like they've been intruded upon with the changes that are made. So it's just zooming in on that area. And there might be fencing or something like that that helps improve that situation too. So here, the frontage along Lancaster Ave, or along, I'm sorry, Conestoga Avenue, might get some kind of small shade trees, lower trees that kind of just visually screen a little bit, so that when you're in this space, you don't feel like you're right on the road. And that might bring a little bit of color. They could be flowering trees, just to help beautify the view from the road as well. Here's some of the vegetation. It would be native plants, obviously, and then we would want to kind of group them and design them in a way that it would be visually pleasing, but also contribute to habitat and uptake of water. We would be removing a lot of trees just in order to create some of these spaces. There's going to be a lot of excavation, so we could be looking at removing around 180 trees, something like that. So the initial removal is something that people should be aware of, and I think we're hoping to educate the public on what is happening, if and when it does happen, so that nobody is shocked, and that people know that what we're doing is trying to ultimately do something good for the environment. Even though taking down trees at first can be kind of a scary thing. Most of these are invasive Norway maples, which kind of actually take habitat away from our native habitat. Don't contribute much to the ecology. So, and then we would be planting many trees. I think we're saying 700 trees would get planted to restore this. So here's some more imagery of the different kinds of vegetation, just various birds and other kinds of wildlife that would be using this space once it has a valuable habitat available. And then here are some of the acreages, about just shy of an acre of wooded wetland would be created. We'd be restoring about 1.5 acres, and then upland, which would be drier woodlands, maybe about 5 acres all restored. And so here's just an image from the Morse Arboretum of a lookout. We might be doing something of this type kind of coming off of the Radnor Trail, maybe not quite as elaborate as Morse Arboretum, but that kind of sense of being up in the trees and looking out across the space. And then some signage might be included just to educate people about what's going on in here and helping people sort of appreciate what it is that this area is doing for habitat and stormwater. I'll let John talk about this.
So recently we filled out a grant with Radnor Township for $997,300. And that is going to be on your agenda to be officially approved coming up. And the funding request focused on green stormwater infrastructure, storm resiliency, and habitat. And for match funding, on that grant, it's recommended to be 25%. So we have match funding proposed. That's through grants and in-kind. Total project costs, $1.3 million, includes design, permitting, outreach, and construction. So a preliminary schedule we have set out if funding works out, spring construction of 2016. That's the hopeful schedule. Permitting and reviews, we've already started looking into these and doing some of them. The Pendy we cleared. We did a pre-application meeting. with the Corps of Engineers and DEP, and there's the rest of the list of the permitting that we'd have to go through. Next steps are approval of the NIFWIF and FWF National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, additional grant applications, design, permitting, and implementation. Thank you very much, and we're open for questions.
Well, I have a couple questions. The educational aspect. So I would want to make sure that we've all gotten a very quick education on stormwater management in the last year or so. And this would be just a great way to showcase for businesses all over our township, things that they could implement, bioswales, et cetera. So I would want to make sure that any kind of education, even if it's just in the overlook, would draw people's attention to all the features that are in the park that could be implemented elsewhere, how they work, even what they cost, so that it starts to get into the vernacular. Well, they did this at the park and it worked there, and not just the environmental and ecological education, but really get down dirty with the stormwater management and how it's working and what it looks like.
That's great.
So is that what you
totally.
envision as well, or?
Yeah, we'd like to educate and even ahead of time work with people and do presentations. So we'll have a community outreach, and it would start there. The middle school stormwater program is very interested in working with us, and they're supporting the project. And then the signage, we'd program the signage. We'd bring in a signage designer, and we'd get input. So stormwater, habitat, and stormwater includes the quality, an actual. And we might even do some monitoring depending how funding goes. We'd like to do that too. So that would be another chance for educating. Absolutely. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Can I just quickly, just to speak to that? One of the projects we did a number of years back with the Morris Arboretum, we specifically attempted to accomplish what you're talking about. That was mainly a riparian planting project, but it was undertaken in such a way, and the signage was done in such a way, and all the surrounding education was done in such a way to say to homeowners, in that case, it was you can do these plantings at your own home. And so we were carefully thinking about how do we translate this from a project that's at the Morris Arboretum to something that can happen community-wide. So we agree with you on that path, and we have done that before.
And not just homeowner. I mean, I would like all of our developers to see how you can use pavements and materials and bios. It's not in the vernacular yet. So every time we get development plans, it's asphalt, and I would love to have this be an example of some of the things that these developers can use in their parking lots, can use when they're repaving and redesigning.
Yeah. It's just simply a matter of getting that input and working it into the plan.
Okay. My next question was more. It's very easy intuitively to see how this will be beneficial in terms of the quality of our stormwater, getting rid of our stormwater. But I'm more curious about the quantity. So we wouldn't actually be changing what's coming onto the site from the 44. If we found a way to increase it, could you adjust it to take more?
Well, potentially, because this was originally done as a concept 4.5 years ago now, but not too much because it is a soggy site. It doesn't infiltrate all that well, and we don't want to create big basins with a lot of standing water. We want a living system that's going to evaporate, and so the plants and the soil transpire. So we don't want to drown them. It's a careful balance. Potentially a little more, but when you remember that 90% of the rainfall we get happens in storms of 1 inch or less. It adds up a lot over the year. So we think about those hurricanes when we think about stormwater, but most of the time it's raining a little bit, and that's where all our pollutants are coming from and our resources lost. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chairman, if I may add, this presentation was made to the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee last week. And of the 6 members present, there was a unanimous vote to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to move forward.
I have some really basic question, and it maybe sound awfully naive to you, but what we have now, you described 44 acres of water courses draining into the site and 1,475,000 cubic feet of storage potentially. The fundamental question is, if this is a site that currently accepts, or does this site accept any of that 44-acre inflow? And if it doesn't, where is that going? And secondly, how are you going to get that 44-acre inflow into this site as part of the project?
The plumbing is there. It's bringing all the water there now. There is a structure that goes under the railroad, and that becomes submerged. It's full of debris and leaves. You can't even see the structure now. It's buried, but it fills up and it goes through pretty quickly. And where it's left sitting, it's in these puddles, these muddy, deep puddles that...
So that's one of our stormwater mains, what she's describing, under the railroad, under the P&W.
Well, if you want to look at it, you know, the ground pitches towards what is a man-made embankment in the railroad. So a pipe had to be put under there to drain that. And as we learned from Mr. Nystedt's presentation last week, that pipe in its current condition is at least partially blocked. So from a maintenance standpoint, we're going to clear that. But what they're proposing is to devise a structure that will allow the release of the stormwater at a pre-described rate.
This pipe is on the west side of the tract.
It goes underneath the tracks.
The north side.
North, it connects.
North.
Yeah.
North towards North Wayne.
All right, that's only one of the four sides. How is water going to get in from the other three
It's
sides?
coming in from the top of the page through piping, a little bit of overland flow. So it's coming from all the neighborhoods and flows into the site, and it flows out through the Radnor Trail. So I'll go back to the watershed plan right at the beginning.
The pipes are already in place,
Yeah,
those little red
road
boxes.
pipes. All 44 acres drain here now. They go to one pipe that goes through D'Antonio, goes through Liberty Lane, and goes down the back of the house on South Devon Avenue. When that pipe clogs up, the water overflows and goes down South Devon Avenue.
Is he describing the whole perimeter, or is he just describing one leg, one side?
The pipes come down Conestoga Road. They come from the whole 44 acres to one pipe
Yeah.
down Conestoga Road. There's a series of inlets that connect, and then one inlet dumps into the property with a pipe. And that, I think that pipe showed up on one of these images.
What-
There it is.
What about water from the eastern entry of Conestoga Road?
Oh, just adjacent to the site? Some of it does, not all of it. Some-
Is that going to be captured?
Yes, everything that can come into the site would be captured.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Well, don't move, because we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is under Public Works and Engineering, Commissioner Higgins, and if you want to introduce the motion that would authorize this grant application, that is our
All right,
next.
this is authorizing the Township of Radnor to apply for a grant with the Delaware Riverkeepers for a project on the West Wayne Preserve property, which is what we just saw described. So I will move the application by the township for the grant, and this is to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
Second, and then Steve, what is our cost in this?
Well, right now, the Delaware Riverkeepers applied for this grant, noting that they needed board approval from Radnor Township. So if the board approves it, there will be costs. John's going to have to determine them. Right now, there will be in-kind costs, and that would be myself, Melissa Kahn, and anybody else who works on the project. And John, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in the future, we were looking at up to maybe $30,000 or $40,000 coming from the township in actual funds. Was that correct, what we discussed?
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, you can't speak from the audience. Let's go to the mic. People at home can't hear you.
Yeah, you'll have the option of going 30 to 60,000. So 30 to 60,000 for the application?
No, for the
No,
project.
for in-kind services.
Right, but there's going to be a match fund for this, correct?
It is not required. The 25% is an optional match. So there is no funding that we're not asking for dollars. We're just
Well,
looking at
Steve, you were
in-kind.
saying in-kind contribution, but then you were saying $30,000. That's hard cash, right?
Well, if we can't provide $30,000 of in-kind contributions, they would look to us to make that up with cash.
Or grants.
Or grants, or other grants. We can
But
apply for
How about the difference
grants.
between the 900,000 and the $1.3 million?
Sure.
That's the way I...
Yeah, I could explain it. The 900,000 will cover all the stormwater management and habitat, and the 1.3 covers trails, overlooks, boardwalks.
Right.
So
So-
we could install the project at the grant
So
funding.
my sense is we should commit to the application, then we should commit to use the stormwater fund as the $400,000 match. And that's the commitment we should make tonight. And that would satisfy, There's no $400,000 match. Is it, then I misunderstand? No.
The 380-some thousand to do the whole project is what he's talking about.
But-
There's a $900,000 project, but if we want the extras, somebody has to come up with that $389,000. That's what John's talking about.
Do you have grants in mind for
Yeah,
that?
we do have some grants in mind. We'd rather talk,
Right.
in committee first before.
When is the notification date for the National Fish and Wildlife? Grant?
April or June.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you been in contact with them about this grant? They know it's coming?
Well, we don't, it's a maybe, so, and then, this one, about grants.
Right.
And then we have other ideas for ahead for if we don't get this one, so we're just looking for a simple yes for those applications.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any other commissioner comment?
Yes. I please go through again what the expenditure would be. I think that it's really not clear what the expenditures, what the township is going to be asked to give for the whole project, not just for the 60,000 you're talking about, Steve.
Well, again, I'm not going to put words in John's mouth, but the way it was explained to us, the way I interpreted it, the township's total exposure would be between $30,000 and $60,000 for this project. That's total exposure. The more in-kind services we can provide, myself as an engineer, Melissa Kahn as administrator, and even Public Works, if we provide leaf mulch for a wetland area, these are all in-kind services. So total exposure is between $30,000 and $60,000. The gap, what we can't make up for in in-kind services, would then become a cash contribution. But that's our total exposure.
That's our total exposure for a $900,000 project.
Correct.
If we want to go to 300, we will discuss that eventually if they can't get funding, if there's any contribution.
But I think, and not to step in here, is I think what you're looking for is the township, to build it as designed and as shown, is the township's going to have to put in almost $400,000 for it. That's what it is. I mean,
Thank you.
mince words or shuffle it any other way, it's $400,000 because if, as it's shown here with the boardwalks and all that, that's what it is. And to me, my impression would be you'd want to put as much stormwater into this issue here, which you may see a difference. But I think what you're after is you got to say this is what the potential of this project is almost $400,000. To shake your head and say, no, it's not part of the $900,000, I think that's wrong because you shouldn't have shown the boardwalks and the other
Well, that's
paths and all that.
$1.3 million.
'cause
That's $1.3 million.
that's what that is. So the township should know that you're almost at $400,000.
No,
You'd have
we're
to
doing
as-built.
we're doing a $900,000 project for $60,000. If we want the boardwalks and all the other stuff, it goes up to $1.3 million, and somebody has to find the funding, like grants, or the township will have to contribute. But right now, we're approving a grant for $900,000, which our contribution is $30,000 to $60,000. If we go to the extra, that's another decision for the township.
Correct. And the beauty of the grant is that we can use other grants to fund those different projects. We can get one grant to do the educational signage. We can get another grant to do the boardwalk. We can get another grant. So, yeah, I'll cap our exposure for the original grant at 30 to 60. So let's say 60, that's the highest exposure. If we decide to go with the amenities, which I hope we do at one point, the goal would be to try to fund that as much as possible through other grants, if I've explained that correctly, John.
That's
You have.
right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments?
Well, I would just like to say thanks to Bob Z for kind of laying this out. I think that if we approve this, you better be ready to come up with $400,000 at the end. And to think otherwise is naive. So now, but what Don is saying is, well, we can come up with that $400,000 out of our stormwater fee. And if that's what you want to do, but let's make it clear to the people watching this on television what we're talking about here, because it's not $60,000.
Yeah. Well, I've made it clear to the people watching at television. We're doing a $900,000 project.
You haven't
improve
made it clear.
Yes, I am making it clear again to you, and I hope you understand it this time. We're doing a $900,000 project that's going to cost us $30,000 to $60,000 maximum. If we want to do the overlooks, and if we want to do the walkways, and if we want to make this accessible to the people of Radnor Township, someone is going to have to come up with $400,000. And we will have those discussions. Like Steve said, we might get grants. But this Board of Commissioners is not approving $400,000. We're approving a grant for $900 and some thousand with our contribution of $30,000 to $60,000, as much in kind as we can. And then if we decide to do the other thing, that's another discussion, and a board will have to approve that. But we're not approving $400,000 now. Just a point of clarity, we're not approving a grant, we're approving an application for a grant?
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Okay, and it's non-binding?
That's
So if
right.
they were to award the grant to us and we say, you know what, never mind, we don't want your 900,000.
Absolutely.
We could do that, but we're not going to do that.
What-
So,
When would that happen?
just another point of clarity.
And do we understand, Bill, do you understand that that person is going to be on the hook for that $400,000 at the township, right?
Nobody's on the hook.
Stop. We don't have to
Reg.
do that.
No.
We don't have to do
Okay.
that. Let me just,
All
another
right,
point of
fine.
clarity. I'm hearing a lot of, there's misinformation going around. So I just want some more information. There was a 25% optional match funding.
Yes.
Does that improve the chances of getting the grant if we agree to that, or does it matter, or what happens?
We've already said where potential funding might come from in that grant, the 25%.
Coming
and it's
from?
From, grants that are coming up. We told them what grants we thought might be feasible, and we put them in there. Some
Okay.
are through the
Further grant funding.
That's right, further
I
grant
see.
funding.
Okay.
And we're not asking.
But there's an in-kind requirement in the grant, so the municipality must do some form of in-kind work, no?
No.
Not necessary, but Steve, you're saying we're able to do some of that.
Right, the thought, I guess when John and I started speaking about this, the project grew because as we spoke, we said, we need to look at X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. And the thought was having the township be the actual grant applicant, the entity to apply for the grant, makes it a stronger grant along with the Delaware Riverkeepers and, perhaps other groups, as I mentioned in my memo, who will provide in-kind services. So it's trying to make a strong grant application. And to be honest, to John's benefit, until he actually makes this application, a lot of these numbers have to click in. So if we don't get those other grants that make up that match, that's going to change the whole face of the application. And then at that point, the board might say, or the application just does not go through. They might award it, and then if you didn't get your growing greener and X, Y, Z, really the project might not be feasible.
But the township, if there's at that point, you've promised a 25% match. So we're looking at $150,000 on 900, is that right? No. No. More than that. 2.25, so.
And it's,
Yeah.
that's optional.
So, and that would be optional. The board will then vote at that point. If those other grant sources fall through, if we get awarded the main grant, the other options fall through, they come back to us and say, look, we would like you to contribute up to $250,000 towards this. Then this board can vote at that point and decide whether to go forward or not.
And it can be phased, and frankly, it's optional.
I think it's great. Thank you.
Okay,
Wait,
is there any
can-
public comment?
Wait, can we get, what's the ongoing operating expense associated with this once it's complete?
That's something actually we spoke of as your Public Works Director and the public's Public Works Director. That's a concern of mine because these types of projects do require maintenance. There are specific plants, and those plants have to have a chance to grow. So John was smart enough in the Delaware Riverkeepers to build in, if this comes to fruition and is bid out, the first few years of that maintenance would be part of the contract. So that would give those plants a chance to establish and become a little more vibrant, which leaves less work for township staff after 3 years in the upkeep of the program.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any public comment on this?
So you don't know what it will cost at this point, is what you're saying?
Commissioner Booker, I don't have a dollar figure. I can tell you what we spend on the track now, which is zero. We really don't do anything in there at this point.
And it shows. Public comment?
Hello, Jim Schneller, St. David's. I utilize this area a lot. I wanted to point out it's a great opportunity for a sidewalk on the Conestoga side, and perhaps for 3 or 4 parking spaces along the West Wayne or the South Devon Avenue stretch there. Also, a great time to integrate a stairway to the bike trail and a sidewalk under the underpass along South Devon. Am I right? Is that South Devon Avenue? Yes, it is. Because they're used sidewalks along there. People walk along the, and also there was a Boy Scout for his Eagle Project built a very usable and still existing stairway up from the South Devon level up to the trail.
Yep.
So I'd hate to see that disturbed, but B, also there's a chance to access on either side of the bike trail down to South Devon Ave. But especially if you could put parking spaces there, you're helping the whole farmers market, that's my nomenclature, area. Parking is very, very much needed there, and the fewer people driving around looking for parking, the less fumes that all these nice plants will be breathing.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening. My name is Christina Peroni, and I live in North Wayne. I would like to disclose that I am on the board of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, and I have been following this project for many years, and I'm delighted that we are finally talking about moving forward. The fact that they can go and get grants and we as a community can benefit from it, I think is a tremendous opportunity to have them sort of looking out for us in this way. Additionally, as I recall, 5 years ago, there was a survey done in the township that the top 3 things that the members of the community care about. Number 1 was our library. It's delightful. We're looking to spend money on our library. And number 2 was the trail. So these are very important to the community, and if we can take care of it and improve it, I think it will be enjoyed by all the members of Radnor Township who enjoy the trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Any other public comment? All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
It passes 5-1. All right, thank you very much for coming. And
The next item is authorization to receive bids for parking lot construction at the Radnor Township Municipal Building. And Steve, could you
Yes,
give
Commissioner.
us a summary of this?
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. I think we're all aware that the current parking situation here at this building, the municipal complex, is inadequate. And there is an area directly outside the police front entrance, which was originally slated for parking but was not constructed, that would be where we're proposing to do this additional parking. So that area is directly across from the police department entrance. If you look at the sketch, that would be on the back of your sheet. Basically, when you look out there now, you see a Type C inlet with stone and a piece of pipe on it, and that's directly that way. That was going to be the drainage inlet for what was to be a parking lot there. So we're proposing to install additional parking. Gannett Fleming, our appointed township engineering firm, has drawn up a sketch which is on the back, and the net increase will be 35 spaces. And if you look a little bit to the west or left of the sheet, you'll see some parallel parking along Creek Road. That's where folks park all the time now. During ball games, we're going to make it a little bit more accessible and a little safer. So right now, the estimated cost of the project is approximately $200,000. If the board approved this, we would do this through sealed bids on Penn Bid. The fiscal impact Originally, this project was built into the 5-year capital plan at year 2018 at $280,000. That price has been reduced. By advancing the project forward 4 years, these costs were not included in the 14 capital budget. So in order for the project to proceed, additional general fund dollars would have to be transferred to the capital fund to fund the project. If the project is approved for 2014, the 5-year capital plan would be amended to remove the expense from 2018 and note the transfer of $200,000 to 2014 to fund the project. Basically, this was a project that was slated for years out, and we're requesting to move it up. There's a definite need, not just on meeting nights, but if you come here on a Wednesday, or if you come here whenever anybody's playing ball. So we would be able to pick up 35 additional spots.
Okay, so it's hard for me to orient from this map. Are spots being added on both the west and the east? Or
If you look at
just
that
the
sheet,
east?
That's the skateboard park.
if you look at the sheet, and more or less in the center, you'll see an X through a tree. That's a tree being removed.
Okay.
Basically, from that tree to the left is all new parking.
So where is that little shed right about there? The one, the shed
Yes.
that's out, has all the bikes in it?
Should I come up and put it on the?
Yeah, why don't you, so that people can see what we're talking about?
Madam President, while Steve is making his way there, part of these funds that will come for this, to help pay for this, is money that has been returned from the bond from the library that was not utilized. Based on our auditors going through this, it had been recommended that we use this towards a project here in the township. So this project, one, is not only it utilizes those dollars because we believe and our auditors believe there would be an IRS issue. So we don't want to have that. Second of all, this helps move this building into compliance with its appropriate parking because, as you are aware now, this building doesn't even comply with our own regulations.
Okay, so that tree in the middle.
If you can see this faint outline, this is the existing entrance to the existing parking, where my pen is tracing. That would be removed, and this is the new parking area, as well as these spaces here along Creek Road.
And those spaces all the way to the west do not interfere with the riparian buffer? They look awfully close.
We will be close, there's no doubt. I mean, we're not intruding any closer to the creek than really what's there now, than what the grass is now. These trees, the trees with an X will have to be removed. The one is a dead tree. The rest are in various shapes.
Are we doing any plantings with this?
Well, there'll be planting in the islands, and stormwater management is another issue we have to consider with this. We are so close to the creek, I do have concerns with trying to do an infiltration bed. We priced it that we would be able to get it. We're going to do some test pits to see if we can actually infiltrate in this area. If not, we're going to have to look elsewhere on site to try to do something to address stormwater, whether that be trying to catch some water coming down Ivan and doing a project over there, or rain gardens or additional plantings. We do have, from a builder down the street, a shade tree. He's going to be planting 20 trees on Enke Park property, and we will be planting whatever's required by shade tree in this area, as well as the islands. There's planting requirements for each of the islands.
Hey, Steve, what's the topographic lines? What are the intervals that those lines, you had it right there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to pull it up a little bit. I can't see the numbers, so I'm going to say, maybe I'll ask
1 foot
Roger.
or 2 foot?
It's either 1 foot or 2 foot. I can't recall, and I can't see.
It's probably 1 foot, but it looks like there's a lot of fill at the corner there. How much fill? You see that tree up at the top with the X out right there at the edge of the new edge of the new parking lot there? How much fill?
Well, what you're seeing is...
What you're seeing is the existing contours there?
I understand, but when you have the new one, presumably it'll be flat, so you'll have to fill in. What will you need to fill in to get the kind of a parking grade right there?
We haven't been authorized to begin final design yet, so we haven't gone that far, but it will take
a little bit of filling. It'll be not necessarily filling, it'll be moving dirt around and recontouring.
Right, but you're gonna, that corner of that lot is gonna need to come up, it looks like at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 feet.
I don't know that at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't say. And don't forget, the lot's going to be sloping that way, but without...
It's not gonna slope that much.
No, but without this board's approval, we can't give them the final get-go to get to those construction drawings.
What do you think, Don? Do you have any opinion on what that?
Yeah, I think they'll do it just fine. We'll figure it out.
Steve, could just, what was the gain in parking spaces again?
35
35.
net gain.
Well, I mean, we need more parking, obviously. I want to be assured that we're not encroaching on the riparian buffer, which is weak as it is, but we should, weak as it is, we shouldn't be encroaching. So I can't tell from this whether we are or not, and I just want to make sure that we're not.
I'll have to confer with Gannett when we have a better set of plans, and I would let this board know. I could let you know at the 31st meeting.
I mean, Did we, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to back this up. Did we consider any other type of surfaces that are we going to use pervious paving? Are we going to, would it make, like, how about gravel? Like, maybe we pick up 10 more spaces with gravel? I mean.
Well, you got to remember that, even by our own ordinance, a stone parking lot's going to be considered impervious. And my concern, and I voiced it to Roger, the reason I want to do test pits out there is I don't know if we're going to be able to infiltrate because we are so close to the stream. So we have to, it's a catch-22. If we try to do some type of BMP, which, believe me, I would like to do, I'd like us to be a showplace for that, we have to make sure that it works. And between now and the 31st meeting, I can get the board some answers on the riparian setback. We can get Gannett to look at the amount of fill we're going to be placing there and see what else we have. But if we have porous paving that can't infiltrate, we just have a pond when we're done. And if we have an underground system that can't infiltrate, you get some storage, but you get no infiltration.
Well, would it be proper to release into the stream, or is that, I mean, eventually everything ends up in the
That's what
stream,
will
right?
happen. I mean, it will go to the stream.
Yeah, but you're protecting the stream with the storage and release, meter
And
release.
and the $200,000 estimated probable cost of construction did include some stormwater management subsurface.
Is there a chance that the library is going to want this money back? Right? Didn't they just say they want to have a project?
Well, we've committed to them on like 20 occasions that we are going to pay for the HVAC, which was what that money was earmarked for. So, I mean, it's fungible money. If we use that, quote, that socket of money for this project, we'll have to find money elsewhere to pay for the HVAC.
Yeah, we've applied for, Kathy, 2 grants. Okay. Yeah, we're going on the second one. That's a system that should have been put out of its misery long ago.
The important point here is that was capital. That was borrowed bond money, 30-year debt.
Understood. Yeah.
And what we don't want to do is spend it for operating.
No,
So
we
I'd
can't.
rather see it go into a capital project than it's worthwhile. Okay, is there any other discussion about this?
I don't know if I'm sold on this. We're going to gain 35 parking places. Where are those people parking now? Are they parking illegally somewhere on this property, or are they parking in the neighborhoods? Where are they now?
If you come on the appropriate night, you'll see they're parked all along Creek. Some double parking in the lot out by Ivan. They'll fill the aisle. I'm not saying 35 spaces is a panacea that will cure our parking ills, but that's 35 more spaces we'll have.
And on a typical Saturday, you might find 35 cars parked illegally here on a Saturday in the summer. So it will make 35 spaces will make an impact.
In years past, we have allowed parking in that grassy area outside the outfield, and that has been a relief. So, I mean, I think we need new parking. I'm not saying that should supplant what we're considering, but even if the 35 isn't enough, when you have that much of a bubble of people, there is that space that we have used in the past, if it's not pouring rain and muddy.
I think as part of that, Madam President, will be
playground that's been discussed at the Parks Board, the Enki playground, so I'm not sure if that's...
That
what's
doesn't
on
go
the-
all the way to the edge of the property, does it?
It's not going to go all the way to the edge whenever that replacement does occur, but it probably is going to come out to what would almost be about center field. If you were to look at Enki A, which is the ball field right along Ivan Avenue. We haven't marked it yet. I know Steve and I have to get out there and take a marking of what that's going to be in terms of the perimeter. But the goal is to still have open space within that area, because that
Right.
does serve as the hub for the Radnor Run, the start and the finish. So we
Right,
don't want to
right.
have that whole area with the
Yeah, so-
playground structure sitting there. Just a rough estimate, I think there's probably at least 100 foot of a buffer that still would be within there.
Okay, great.
And we will, we'll look at grass pavers and other options for the surfacing of that.
Great.
I did find some perk test results, but they're relatively shallow. My concern was more with depth if we go with a subsurface system. But I know the board's seen the grass pavers in other areas. So we'll look at them and some other possibilities if the soil can accept that water, and perhaps we can have a small showcase for future developers also.
Okay,
But we talked about the impact on the stream, and you're not very optimistic about finding a way to
Well, I think that's...
hold the water and filter it before it
I
goes
think
into
that's
streams.
one of the things we need to work on. Gannett Fleming has only had, we've only authorized them to do more or less preliminary work. So we need to have them dig deeper and see what we could do. If we can control some volume, if we can infiltrate some, that's a reduction of what goes into the stream. The subsurface system would control rate, the rate that it gets into the stream. So we need to look at all of that. Currently, right now, I think that inlet just has a pipe that goes into the stream. The parking lot was never built around it. For some reason, just a portion of the stormwater system went there.
Bob, how much money are we getting in the refund or remitter from the library bonds?
I'll make sure that we get something out to you tomorrow on what that exact account is, so I've asked Bob Tate already to
But is
get
it-
that information to the board.
Is it just a fraction of the 200, or is it most of the 200?
Off the top of my head, I remember we applied for the original grant at around 350 with the township matching 175, with the thought, if we got the grant, we were going to go with a full-blown this is before all the work that's taken place now. We would go with a full-blown renovation and energy-saving items at the library. If we didn't get the grant, we were going at the 175. 74 and change.
Now, he's talking about how much is left over that came back to the township to
it's
pay
like
for this
three
project.
something.
We got money
There's
back.
plenty there, but I just want to emphasize that this is not found money, because we still have the commitment to pay for the HVAC system. So yes, the money's there, it's available, this would be a suitable use for it. It doesn't negate our commitment to pay for that HVAC at the library.
I'll move the authorization to receive bids for parking lot construction for the Radnor Township Municipal Building.
Second.
All right, I don't think I'm ready to vote for this. I think this is a lot of money, and we have a parking problem, but I don't think it's that critical, that severe, that warrants us spending this money at this time.
Okay, is there any other comments? Or
I'm going to support it. This building, when it was constructed, I think required at least 200 parking spaces to meet our zoning code, and I think we only have about 50. So this is a good step in the right direction. I was here. I'm here during the week occasionally, and I couldn't find a parking space. I just kept driving around looking for a place to park. So it gets filled up. When there are sporting events, now we're competing with the commercial use here, the business use here, and then the sport use. So it crosses over, transcends the township building. I'll support it.
And I want to just say that my support is conditioned upon respecting the riparian buffer and trying to get some sort of porous in there if we can.
And we'll have some answers for you on the 31st.
Okay.
Well, my concern is really that there's not the funds sufficient for the commitments that we have, and it's one thing after another, and this is really OP money. And we're going to run out of other people's money eventually, so.
Okay,
I'm
any
gonna
other
not
comments?
support it.
Any public comment on this?
Good evening, Maya Van Ross. I'm the Delaware Riverkeeper, Radnor Township resident. Just based on the conversation tonight, it seems to me that there hasn't been very much investigation into alternatives to avoid the need for parking in this spot so close to the creek. It's not just about how you do construction of these spots, but there are potentially other opportunities. I've heard 2 of them already mentioned tonight. So I would encourage you to include in your motion and your approval an obligation that the township staff take a genuine look at other opportunities. I guarantee you there are some. You may not choose to accept them, but I guarantee you there are other parking options if one would open up their eyes and look a little deeper. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Is there anybody else who'd like to make public comment? All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor of
Aye.
the authorizations to receive bids, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
It passes 4-2.
All right, the next item is Resolution 2014-32, final preliminary approval of the train station at Villanova University for Septa. I think Mr. Falcone is here with his expert.
Good evening, David Falcone on behalf of Septa. It's convenient we are presenting this project after what was just discussed. It's a parking lot that you all may remember for the Villanova train station next to Villanova University. We are expanding the existing parking lot and creating new spaces. At our last meeting in front of this board, you asked us to go back and look at a couple of things to try and make the design a little bit better. One, most importantly, was specifying how our waivers were being interpreted on the plan and what we were actually seeking with respect to our waivers. One of the things we were asked to do is not compromise islands for parking spaces. We needed the extra green space, we were told. So we did go back and added islands to the every 10 spaces. There's one exception, however, where we don't have that 10-space maximum, and that was a design because there are handicap accessible spaces. And after discussing it with your engineer, we decided that the best design and the best use for that specific area was to leave it as originally shown. So we removed the need for the waiver all throughout the parking lot, with the exception of this one area. So there's still a waiver, however, it's a limited request for one area next to the handicap spaces. Julie, do you want to unroll the plans? And I'll give you just a quick overview, and then I have Julie with me, Julie Rentz from Urban Engineers. She has prepared the plans and also did a letter to Roger, the township's engineer, explaining exactly what the waivers are that we were requesting and how they are all, for the most part, very limited to specific areas of the plan. But the area I am referencing with respect to the 10 spaces is in this area here. There are more than 10 spaces there, and that's, again, because we are using handicap spaces there. We did not have islands spaced appropriately at the top of the parking lot. When we last came to the commission, you asked us to go back and please add them, even if it was at the loss of spaces, so we've done that. Now these are compliant. There are no other areas on the site that would be more than 10 spaces without an island. That also helped us solve some other issues with respect to plantings in islands. We stated in our waiver request that we would not be able to comply with planting in islands because there wouldn't be islands every 10 spaces. So we would, by definition, not be able to have a planting every 10 spaces. That waiver, again, remains. However, it's only with respect to this area where there will not be an island for us to plant. So where there are islands, they'll be planted. An additional waiver, which we've asked for, deals with plantings where there are catenary structures. Is that right, Julie? And to the extent that there are structures that do not permit us to plant in accordance with the ordinance as a result of existing structures that service the rail line, we would obviously not plant in those areas. So those were the main issues that we were asked to look at when we were last here for caucus. Is that right?
Well, it sounds like you've made honest efforts to improve things for us.
We've tried to be responsive, yes. However, the in the in the engineer's letter and in our resolution, there's still blanket waivers. So, I mean, I know they're not blanket on the plan. Would you be opposed to adding a phrase at the end of those, especially B and C, saying only as they apply to the handicapped area and the...
If you look at Roger's letter, and what I was going to bring this up as well, he incorporated our letter to him, which specifically stated that it spells out how each waiver is a limited waiver. It's the page 2 of Roger's letter. We would be willing to accept all of the conditions of Roger's letter, and each of those conditions, each of the waivers are specifically stated there, exactly how we're seeking them. I'll give you a minute to take a look at that, but that is a little more detailed than the resolution prepared by Mr. Rice.
Yeah, and if I can follow up on that, my items 1 through 8 in my letter on page 2, as Mr. Falcone says, are specifically the conditional waivers, and they're limited to just the specific items that they're requesting on their plan. It's not a blanket waiver, and if you would grant these waivers, they couldn't change something somewhere else in the parking lot. They would have to come back if need be.
That's right.
But this would just limit it to what's shown on the plan.
So your specific description of the limitations is incorporated to into the blanket waiver that's on the resolution?
I would have to confirm that with John, but that's the intent, and I believe the resolution references my letter.
It does.
It does, yes. So that, okay. It's good enough for me.
Madam President, if I may, I would ask that also the board consider here, we spoke previously, about the Wayne Septa train station there.
Yes,
I would ask that it be included that if the waivers are granted, that they commit to at least a minimum of $50,000 to help resolve some of the water issues that are coming down off of North Wayne. If you're more comfortable not to exceed $50,000, but I think that would make it go a long way with assisting in some of the stormwater issues that do impact North Wayne Avenue as it heads north.
Yes, we did discuss this at the last meeting, and you said you were going to
We did.
inquire.
I did inquire, and my client is not willing to tie the two projects together. We looked at this site and addressed the issues with this site that the board asked us to address. We aren't willing to commit a $50,000 contribution to another station that has nothing to do with this project. We think we've made responsive strides with this plan to meet the needs that the commissioners asked. To tie this plan to another station, we just don't think is appropriate.
Well, it's not completely unrelated in that you're asking for a waiver because you can't meet infiltration requirements. And this is another property of yours where we have difficulties because the infiltration requirements were not met, and we're having difficulties because of it. So it's not completely unrelated.
Well, so with respect to stormwater management, though, we did seek a variance and obtain the variance for impervious cover, and we are exceeding what our requirement was from the zoning board for stormwater management, which was to bring it to a condition A, and if we could, to bring it to condition B, and we've met that condition B, which is back to a compliant state. So we've gone the extra mile at every turn on this plan to make it as positive as can be. This will be a better site. From a stormwater management perspective, this will be significantly better. We will control stormwater on this site as if it were a compliant site, and there is basically none there now.
Madam President, if I may, I would say that I would ask the board to reject all the waivers here to deny this, because if what Mr. Falcone is saying, they are not compliant on their previous project at the Wayne train station, of the amount of water that does come off of that property, that they have not managed the water appropriately. So again, given a track record of just looking at that station to this proposal, I don't know how we would actually believe that SEPTA would be able to manage it appropriately here.
Well, we would have to meet with the engineer. Of course, we're going to prepare a plan, and it's going to be approved by your engineer, and you're going to permit it, and it will comply. I just don't see how the two, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Zinkowski. I mean, we were asked to design this site in a certain way, and that has to be to your engineer's satisfaction. We've done that. We've over-designed our stormwater beyond what the zoning board asked us to do. We've met every request. The only request we're not asking is to contribute $50,000 to another site. It's our site, but that's not this project. We're not here seeking relief for that site. We're focusing our efforts on this site. Perhaps there'll be a redevelopment of that site at another time, at which point we can address the stormwater there. We're making this site better, significantly better. So the way I'm hearing it is the township would rather have no sites be more positive if they can't have both.
This site has relatively small stormwater problems compared to the Wayne train station site.
Well,
And,
it has. I think it has stormwater issues for sure because there's no management there right now, and we're expanding it. It's all impervious.
The difference is that you have a steep slope at the Wayne station, and you have runoff that goes into basically before it gets to a creek or after it gets to a creek, it goes into people's basements and pushes cars down the street during the May 2012 severe storm we had. So the township manager is, I think, right on the ball here in recommending that we deny this. It's a draconian remedy, and I'm just looking for something from you. You don't really have your client here tonight. You just have an expert engineer from Urban Engineers. But
We have talked to the client, and they're willing to look
would-
at the situation, but
Right.
to say to us, contribute up to $50,000, it's not. They will go and evaluate the site to the best they can. I mean, Septa is committed to making their stations better. They're doing it all across the region. But
I
to put a
can't-
dollar figure on it,
I don't have the
think-
details of Mr. Norsini and Mr. Zinkowski's dealings with the SEPTA department that has jurisdiction over the Wayne Station. All I know is that I've been asking them for over 24 months now to get SEPTA to a discussion table to help us manage the North Wayne problem. And I'm sure they've been trying, and there's just no results. And what you
Mr.
said a
Higgins,
minute
I
ago
will get
doesn't
them
give
to
me
the
any
table with
comfort.
you.
When it doesn't give me any comfort when you say that, well, when we redevelop the Wayne Station property, maybe we
SEPTA
can do
will come and-
something.
I will bring SEPTA to this township to discuss it. I just don't think, as a condition of this application, it's appropriate for the township to say, contribute $50,000 to this other site. If it's come in here and have a real discussion, I will say to this board, I will bring my client to Radnor Township to discuss that. That's something I can
Well, how about
represent.
come in and have a discussion and make a commitment to take measures to improve it up to $50,000. Maybe it's going to be only $5,000.
But we need, John Rice, you want to comment on this?
I mean, in terms of the I don't know where the 50,000, what that will do, but I think it's fair to ask SEPTA to come up with a plan to fix whatever's going on at the other train station as part of this. And if they're not willing to do that, you certainly have the option to deny all the waivers. I don't know that I've heard any hardship for these waivers other than, I guess, the site. There's some hardship because of the existing conditions and the existing facilities. But I don't think it's appropriate just to get a contribution if we don't know, what's going to fix or help that other site. But I would suggest if the board's that concerned about that other site, and I know there's been a lot of stormwater problems, is put off the approval of this resolution. This is a preliminary plan approval resolution, or deny the waivers as part of the preliminary plan approval resolution unless SEPTA comes up with a plan to address stormwater at the other site.
So I have a couple of issues. One, I think it's inappropriate. We ask these developers come to us, and we ask them to do more, and they've done more. So for us to now go back and say the more that you've done is not enough, do more on top of that is one problem. And then to do this at this point in the process, if this board wanted that sort of thing, the time to ask for that was
A caucus, and we did.
meetings ago.
And we did. And they said yes.
Don, we asked
would go
for it
back.
at the right time. The right time to deny it is now. This is preliminary. This is the only time you get to deny it. We don't need to deny it. We need to table it.
Yeah.
Till the next
I was going
meeting.
to say, can I move the table?
And we respectfully ask you to go back to your client, to SEPTA, and ask them to consider some analysis improvement plan of the Wayne train station.
Commitment to
A commitment to do
improvement.
this, to do the work, the review. I agree with our solicitor that to ask for 50, it's kind of arbitrary to ask for money. What we're looking for is to look for some other focus and commitment to that site.
Yeah.
And resolving that issue.
If it's going to be tabled, that's fine. And what I'll do is ask my client to come and meet with Mr. Zinkowski and Mr. Norsini and sit down and discuss it. I will say I believe this is a dangerous precedent that's being set. These projects are unrelated. This parking lot was designed in accordance with zoning relief, and the waivers are very limited.
It's a difficult site, to say the absolute least, and there is a need, both on this site and in your comprehensive plan, for this type of development in transit. So I believe the township is not looking at the big picture here, but I will have my client come back and speak with the township.
Madam Chair, we've had chagrin, and I'll have to get the report. They were looking at what was done in that upper parking lot, and I have to say, I don't think Wayne Train Station is up for any rehabilitation for quite some time. So in that respect, there's nothing in the short term coming down the road for that.
Right, okay. Well, we appreciate your willingness to meet with the township and come up with a plan, and if we get that commitment, that's great. And the dollar figure is meaningless at this point.
Madam President, if I may, I would ask that you come back in front of the Board of Commissioners to have that discussion, that the meeting with Septa is done here.
Well,
in front of the, with the board.
We can
Sure.
decide that offline. Okay, so there's...
So I was going to say, can I move to table?
Yes, you can. Second?
Second.
And is there any staff comment on that, or any public comment? Elaine, if I may add.
My comment, I think it's a mistake to table it. My sense is that this needs to go through. We've been at this, and we should approve it tonight.
Well, and it probably will go through, but we'll have a better feeling about a conversation about their commitment. Yes, Roger. The expiration date for this plan would be April 25th, so I would
I'll
request
draft
that
a
the
letter.
applicant address that with another extension.
I'll draft a letter for you,
Thank
Roger.
you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And we have some public comment?
Again, my name is Christina Peroni. I appreciate, Mr. Higgins, your support for the North Wayne community, which is flooding out, and holding people accountable, institutions accountable for taking care of their land. You know, whenever we as a township give a waiver, that means that they get something. In return, we as a community should get something. And if it means better stormwater, this is the time to ask. And I appreciate, Madam President, the fact that you're saying you want a commitment, not to have a conversation, but to make a commitment. And that's what we need to start requiring of our institutions to take care of our infrastructure, because they are flooding us and hurting us, and yet not necessarily contributing to the stormwater problem we have. So I appreciate your tough stand on this, and I think it's a wise move. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? All right, it's been moved and seconded. This is the motion to table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed?
Opposed.
So it passes 4-2.
We are now up to Resolution 2014-33, final approval of 115 Strafford Avenue LLC. And with us tonight is Mr. Brosman, the attorney representing the developer, and the developer's representative, Mr. Bo Erickson.
Good evening, George Brosman representing the applicant. We were here a couple of weeks ago for caucus, and I think there was actually some discussion. You were looking to approve it then, but we decided we should come back, or you decided we should come back. So I believe we have a clean review letter. We have Planning Commission recommendation, and I think we looked pretty clean at caucus. And we've actually already submitted the plans, the development agreements. I understand John Rice has a couple minor things to change on those, and we've already submitted our letter of credit, so we're actually hoping to record the plans by Wednesday and get this project going as soon as possible.
Well, the project already is going. You've taken the building down, so.
Well, that was a separate permit that we received. That was a demolition permit.
I'll move the approval of Resolution 2014-33.
Is there a second?
Second.
One comment on the resolution, the date on the revised plans in the now therefore, it's March, the last set of plans is, the last revision is March 3rd, 2014, not January 29th, 2014. So with that edit to the resolution, it's
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you, John. All right, is there any other discussion or comment from commissioners, from staff, from the public? All right, I'll go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? 6-0.
Thank
That's
you.
the easiest meeting you've been through in all the months you've been in front of us. And you must have been
Thanks.
worried when we were so cantankerous with Septa.
We weren't worried. Thank you.
All right,
All
next.
right, the
item.
next item is Resolution 2014-34, award of the Fairview Avenue Drainage Project. And this has quite a history. I can go into it, but I will yield to Mr. Norsini and let him summarize it.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Several years ago, the township approved a grading permit, uphill, if you will, of a property on Fairview Avenue. And by approving that grading permit, we've allowed discharge of stormwater onto this property. And it's caused these folks hardship in not just a wet lawn, but water in the basement. So we had Chagrin Valley engineers look at this project, look at this property to see if there was a way to provide some relief. And they did. They designed a project which uses perforated pipe and as well as some other surfaces to keep a barrier between the house and the water, and basically collect that water and discharge it to an inlet on Fairview. So we did go out to bid. As you can see, we received 4 bids, the lowest bid being Eagle Contracting, followed by Pools Landscaping, Betta Construction, and Mayfield Gardens. So Eagle Contracting at $77,910 is the lowest qualified bidder. And the Public Works Department and myself are requesting the board award this project. Now, funding for this project we would request would come from the general fund through a supplemental appropriation as opposed to from the stormwater fund. Because this project is not due to a stormwater issue of the township that we find throughout the township, but actually one that we allowed to be created. I won't say any more because the solicitor says I shouldn't practice law, so.
Steve, then we would have to make a budget amendment for this?
That's correct. I spoke to Bill White last week, and this would have to be a budget amendment because we don't wish to use stormwater funds, dedicated stormwater fee funds for this. So it would have to be a amendment.
All right, if we chose to use dedicated stormwater fees, the mechanism is in place to do that now, and the stream of money is coming in, correct? Or
That's
in?
correct. We've collected about a little over 90% of the funds.
All right, so my sense is that this is the sort of project why we have a stormwater fee, and we should use the stormwater fee to pay for it.
Well, why is the staff recommendation not to use that? All right, I'll move the approval of resolution.
Wait, let's hear it.
Just
Speechless.
put it on the agenda, that's all right.
Let me just, I haven't been involved in this recently, but this has been going on for at least 4 years. This is a stormwater project that there were permits issued a long time ago, and it resulted in a lot of downstream issues in terms of the permit that was issued, the plans it was based on, and it created problems. So this is a remedy, like a lot of other remedies that you have out there with stormwater. In terms of where what pot of money you take it out of, I don't have an opinion on that either way. You know, it's an issue like a lot of issues that were created over the years when there wasn't any stormwater management in place or any controls in place. So I'm going to leave it up to Mr. Norsini to recommend where the money comes from.
And the memo that you provided us did indicate that it would come from the stormwater fund.
The original, I did amend that after reviewing it, because the way I was looking at it was, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, almost like an errors and omissions issue here. So we allowed a permit, whatever it was, 6 years ago. It predates all of us here when this permit was allowed. So we're fixing a situation that we granted approval on. And that's why I thought it best not to use a dedicated stormwater fund. Not that stormwater issues throughout the township aren't from houses that were built years ago, but this is one we had a direct hand in.
Well, I'm not real concerned either about where the money comes from. I will say this, that I visited the site today. I know the family fairly well. They have suffered a long time with this problem. They have water in their backyard that sits there from, well, it's damp 365 days a year. It's puddles probably half of that time. It never gets dry. And their basement has suffered damage in addition to the backyard being largely unusable a good part of the year. And so I think they've put up with this a long, long time. It goes back to 2005 from what they tell me. And so, and Steve, I will point out one thing. I think the remedy here is going to be sophisticated. It's going to be difficult. There is water coming in from at least 2 directions onto that property, and to collect it and then channel it to where it can do no more harm is going to be tricky. So I hope we have the right supervision during construction when this goes forward.
Well, the construction plans were designed by Chagrin Valley engineers, and Gannett Fleming's inspector, who we use on many projects, will be our inspector on the site.
So I will move the passage of Resolution 2014-34, awarding a contract to Eagle Contracting in the amount of $77,910.
Second. Then I'd like to amend it that the fee would come from the stormwater fund.
Second on the amendment.
Okay.
I would just say about that is that we've created this fund to deal with stormwater problems, and I don't think this example should come out of stormwater fund because it sets a precedent that anyone had a past problem, the township made an error or something, and they'll go after this big pot of funds. So we set the precedent that no, it's not coming out of there, it's coming out of general fund. So when you come to us with your problem, you know, you don't have this pool of money you can go to. You have to really convince us that it's a serious problem like these people have spent 4 years doing. So I don't think we should vote for the amendment.
Is there any other discussion about?
Yeah, I'll just say my reasons for it. One, I think that people who have a problem are just going to want it fixed. So I don't think that they're going to, that detail I think is going to be beyond their concern. They're just going to want it fixed. This is why we have the stormwater fund, to fix problems like this. So to not use it, in my opinion, is a mistake. And then this is unbudgeted. We didn't budget this money. We have money sitting in a pot specifically for this function, and now we're not using that money. We're going to use unbudgeted money instead. So to me, all things considered, it's best to take this money from the fund.
Any other comment on the amendment?
Also, just for clarity, is there a performance guarantee, or if this, to Jim's point, if this doesn't work, then we got to go back and spend more?
Well, we have to put our trust in Chagrin Valley engineers. Ryan Cummins is a licensed professional engineer, as is his partner in Chagrin Valley. They're the designers, so we have to trust in their design. We need our inspector to make sure that that design is carried through on the property. And then we have bonding from a maintenance standpoint to make sure that if there was any type of a work problem, it's covered to go back.
So your view, if we spend this money, then it's going to be fixed?
Yes, Commissioner, there's never absolute guarantees in anything we do, but I am confident that Ryan Cummins and his partner designed a system that will address what needs to be addressed. I will leave it in their hands.
Also, why is there such a range in the bids?
When we look at bids, usually there's some outliers, and Mayfield Gardens, and this one is an outlier. So a lot of times, if you want to find the true price, the real price of a bid, you throw out the super low, you throw out the super high, and you look in the middle. In this case, seeing the disparity, I'm going to say the real price is around that $80,000 mark because we have 2 folks that came in at that. I used to do site work estimating, and there can be a huge, huge range in prices depending on the contractors, how busy they are, how they see the project, maybe from a difficulty standpoint, how booked they are. So there's a lot of things that go into that.
Okay, any other comments about the amendment?
Madam President, if I may, just two items. One is to address, I think, Commissioner Booker's point, is there's going to have to be a waiver by the homeowner that's going to have to sign, that they will have to sign that when this correction's done, that's it. The second part is in regards to the stormwater fee, using that. I don't think it's appropriate to use stormwater fee funds for one home to correct an issue on one home. I think the intent of this was to start solving issues globally where you're going to resolve numbers of issues for many properties.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment from the board or staff? Any public comment?
Yeah, I have to, I'm going to vote against the amendment. Strictly speaking, this is not stormwater remediation. It's another type of problem. We don't need to go into all the details. But, Bob, I'm really distressed when you say that the homeowner is going to have to waive their rights if there's a problem with this construction. We shouldn't be doing business that way.
Commissioner, you're entering on a private property, and at some point, when does it end? Because at different storms, different rights that we have to say, well, is your yard going to be perfectly dry as part of this? I don't think we can ever say that. And we would open ourselves up, and I think protecting the township from the work that's going to be done, there's going to have to be something. But there's also performance bonds that actually have to be issued on this as well, so that if you do have those problems in those first few years, you're going to be able to go back and rectify whatever the problems are, plus then hold your engineering firm accountable if they didn't design it right. It's on them, and that's why they carry errors and omissions insurance.
Well, that's all well and good, but it doesn't require the homeowner to sign any kind of waiver. I mean, it's one thing to say that the property won't be 100% moisture-free. No engineer is going to sign up to that warranty. But on the other hand, it's not correct to say that the homeowner, through us and through the contractor, won't have remedies if this repair doesn't work. So.
Okay, any other comment or from staff or from, is there any public comment? And this is on the amendment about where the funding would come from. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the vote. This is just the amendment on where the funding will come from. All those in favor of Don's motion that it comes from stormwater management fee, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Opposed.
It fails 2-4. Now, the underlying motion, is there any further discussion on the underlying motion to approve the expenditure? And is there any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed. It's not
It
budgeted.
passes 4-2. Okay.
The last item is we have a bridge that was destroyed during our very severe winter, and it's on Chamounix Road. It's a culvert over Gulf Creek, and I understand from our Director of Public Works that we have a major problem on our hands. It's going to take some significant amount of time to get it fixed. Steve, could you go ahead?
Thank you, Commissioner. So a couple of weeks ago, we noticed a rather large hole on Chamounix Road right at the culvert. So we closed the bridge, and we brought our emergency contractor in to do some bypass pumping so we could get a look at the culvert itself. And what we found was a stone, a stone foundation with a concrete arch culvert over that. And the foundation is severely undermined, scoured. There's cracks, there's radial cracks throughout the concrete. I also brought our township engineer out there to confer with me, and we both agreed that the culvert should be removed and demolished at this point. It'd be very, very expensive, and I don't even know how well we would be able to fix that. So that being said, we know we have to remove that culvert, and we're looking at, again, I asked Gannett to come in because there's a couple of structural items that are going to have to be done. I've replaced culverts like this in the past, and the pipe, that's not a problem, but there are a few other issues. So we had Gannett's structural person out there, and what we're recommending at this point is to put a galvanized, somewhat elliptical pipe in place of the arch that was there. And we would use precast concrete end walls as the treatment. Currently, the end walls that are there are just stuccoed, so there's no stone work, there's nothing along those lines. There is some stone masonry work along the stream, and about half of that would remain. The other half would be removed because that's severely scoured also. If you go out and look at the bridge, you can see there's quite a skew and there's quite a turn the creek has to make, and that's why we get a lot of the scouring that we have. So by the use of this pipe, it's going to eliminate a lot of that problem. And also the other reason we brought Gannett in, I don't think we're going to have an issue with DEP, but as far as, like the parapet walls, how high they are and how strong they are, that we're not grandfathered on. So there's another structural item that Gannett will have to design. There's going to be a moment slab which stops a car from, if it hits the wall, from flipping it. So the weight of the car actually helps on the overturning. So all that being said, the engineering to do this, permitting, design, is approximately $40,000. And if we do this on an emergency basis, construction will be somewhere in the $100,000 range. So that's to get this moving along as quickly as possible. If we wish to go to sealed bid, that's going to extend this probably about 6 weeks. So that's where we stand with this. We did look at other options. There's another option where we could use a structural plate arch where you dig 2 footings and create an arch out of, again, galvanized steel. And this way we're able to use a precast end wall and not have a lot of extensive concrete forming on site, which costs money. So the more that we can get that standardized, the more the cost comes down. So we're looking at a couple of things. How quickly can we get this done? The cost of getting it done, and the lifespan and life cycle costs of the project. So galvanized steel pipe, based on the industry standards, has at least a 50-year life. The concrete end walls, well beyond that. So I have actually done repairs like this in similar situations. I would recommend moving forward with this. Really what I would ask the board for is direction on if we wish to move forward in an emergency basis, where we go to a contractor on an under an emergency basis and have them do this work, or if we would go on a sealed bid basis.
So can you describe to us, I haven't been over there, is the road closed? Are homeowners
The road's permanently
locked out?
closed. I had our folks set up a detour because I knew it was going to be closed for a while, because once we did assess the damage, I knew it was going to take a little time to figure out what can we do. So we did that. Chamounix Road, believe it or not, down by the park, gets considerable traffic. There's quite a few cars that go down that way. So the detour is a hardship for some folks, there's no doubt.
So what are we talking about? If we go to emergency, what do we save? 2 months, 3 months?
It's really just the availability of the pipe. We still have to go to DEP under an emergency permit, the availability of the pipe, and a contractor that would do this work on an emergency basis. And I don't know, Roger, I'll look to you. Do you think we grab this in a couple? I would think in a couple of months we could get this done on an emergency basis.
On an emergency basis,
And
yeah.
if you go out to bid, how many months are you talking about?
Well, then it's going to, the engineering fees are going to go up because I'm going to have to tap Gannon Fleming to do a bid package and specifications along those lines. There's going to be I had to give the contractors roughly a month to look at this, 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm going to say it's going to add 4 to 6 weeks to that 2 months. So 3.5 months.
And what's the fire company have to say about the road being closed?
I have not heard from the fire company.
Okay.
Do you have a recommendation?
I do. I think that this is a matter of safety, and it's a matter of providing access and egress for the residents in that area. And I'm not going to speak for the solicitor, but my opinion is this could be done on an emergency basis.
I'll make such a motion.
I'll second that. Question,
Can this, I'm sorry.
well, is this, I mean, this is stormwater, yes, culvert? So this is appropriate to come out of the stormwater fund?
I did mention this to the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee and let them know that this was most likely coming their way. You know, unfortunately, we know that the infrastructure is old. So we have this today, and we could have another one in another area pipe, in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. So they have to be prepared to adjust the budget with things like this. So yes, again, my recommendation would be this is exactly what the fund's for.
John, Don asked you for your opinion on emergency basis.
What the charter permits is emergency expenditures, sometimes without board approval, and then, if necessary. He's not suggesting that. But with board approval, emergency expenditures, the board would have to approve it. I guess my question is, what are we talking about here?
I think we'd have to look at, we're talking $140,000, and I would add a contingency of 20% to that for what we may not know is going to happen. So that would be $168,000.
And I guess my further question is, why is it an emergency? Because of the road closing, because of the...
Correct.
I mean,
I'm sure if you lived on Chamounix Road, you feel like this is an emergency.
I understand that, but there's no guidance in the charter or even in the bidding codes what constitutes an emergency. So I would still, the board wants to authorize this, see that there's 3 bids received or 3 estimates, not to go through the public bidding process, but at least get more than one person who's going to put a number on this.
So then to do that, do we have to get further engineering?
I think, I know what Solicitor Rice is talking about. Again, I've had to do this also in the past. We're going to put together a relatively quick specification, and I'll contact 3 contractors that I know can handle this type of work. We'll do this all within a period of a couple weeks, have a pre-bid meeting. It would still be sealed in the fact that nobody's going to know what the other one's bidding, and I'll open them publicly, and we'll go from there.
And in the meantime, you'll be moving forward with EPA and...
We'll move forward with DEP, and my thought would be, we'll purchase this pipe, so we'll get, we'll get a purchase order processed for purchasing the pipe. That's out of the contractor's hands, and maybe even purchase the end walls, or get them started.
All right.
Okay, so that's pseudo-emergency basis.
And I think there'll be a comfort level for the board and the solicitor in that we have some prices from other folks, although
All right,
it's not a
do you-
wide open sealed bid.
Do you need a vote on that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's been moved and seconded by
Yeah.
Bill and John. Is there any other
Well,
commissioner comment?
one detail. A resident in the area asked me what type of materials will be used as a finishing.
The end walls are
for-
concrete, they're just smooth concrete.
Steve, if I may add, it's not 100% determined that there'll be precast end walls yet. We've also discussed doing the armor plate stone, which it would be just stone along the bank. That hasn't been determined yet. That's still being discussed and designed.
And if, going along what Roger said, so we were talking about the one curved area using the armor and perhaps end walls. I think final design is going to end up that way. There are treatments we can do to that. I've painted them. I've applied stone to them. I mean, there's other things we can do, but what's there now is a rough stucco look. So it's not like we're looking at field stone or anything like that currently.
Fieldstone would be out of the question.
I think that's going to I don't think you want to go that way. I'm just saying, in comparison to what is there, which is a stucco finish, there's nothing very special about what the bridge looks like.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Any staff comment? Any public comment?
I live down the street from this Chamounix area where the road's been closed, and if I understand correctly, this abuts Eastern University, is that right? Right, that area, that's where, okay. So this is a stormwater, anybody who's walked through the beautiful Eastern campus knows that it's basically a wetlands. And that area is flooding over. So I'm interested to know how much money has been contributed to our stormwater fund from Eastern University, and can we use, or request that Eastern contribute to this, because this is their area. This is Eastern. This is the effect of Eastern.
What we can do is, at the next meeting, we'll get the information of who's paid, and we'll check and see if Eastern has contributed their bill
that was sent to them for?
I did put through a right to know to find out how much Eastern, Villanova, and Cabrini, Valley Forge have paid, and haven't heard that information yet. So I think that's pretty critical. Again, we're using township funds to correct institutional problems that are actually organizations that don't contribute to our infrastructure. So I think something that is cause and effect right here, we should really look at
I don't see
Eastern.
the cause and effect because this comes from private property and it flows into a township property. I don't know where Eastern's involved in this at all.
Eastern abuts the property. Eastern is right next to where the water,
I don't
right?
think so.
This Porter Schiavone Road, it's actually downhill from Fenimore Park. So upstream are some residential homes, Valley Forge Military Academy. Downstream takes you closer towards Eastern.
So it's Valley Forge, it's Eastern. It all runs down. So I think we should really find out what they're contributing and see if we can get some of this $150,000. That's why we instituted this stormwater fee to the universities. So let's start getting that money and using it.
I think that also makes a good case for the voluntary contribution for service program that we've sent out to the universities. We will resend that out to them again for their contributions.
More public comment?
Yes, that reminds me of a point, Jim Schneller, St. David's, that reminds me of an accurate point, which is that there is not only student pedestrian traffic, but the occasional pedestrian traffic coming across from the Chamounix area, from the Lancaster Avenue residential area. Many different points, and going and walking to Fenimore Park. Would it be a good time to have a sidewalk on this bridge? There's no bridge. If you want to walk into Fenimore Park coming down from South Wayne or North Wayne, you have to stomp through some very muddy, and everybody has to do it. So if you had a small pedestrian pathway, this would be a great time to do it.
Thank you, Jim. All right. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
I'd like to move ordinance 2014-01, amending the code of Township of Radnor.
Do, I'll second that. Do we have any?
Well, it's all listed here, what we're doing as far as
And this has already been
stop signs.
introduced,
Yes.
and we voted to
Wait,
introduce
I
it.
would just have a question. On the middle school, isn't it already prohibited to make left turns at these locations?
Yep.
So what are we amending?
No, we have a sign says no left turn, but we haven't, don't have it on our ordinance. This puts it on our ordinance.
So there's a sign on the street, but it's not in the books.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And it needs to be, so this is a correction.
So as we find errors, we're correcting them.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other commissioner comment or staff comment on this? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 6-0.
No, abstain.
That's it for public safety.
It passes 5-0
One abstain.
with one abstention. Next, Personnel and Administration, Commissioner Fischer. Thanks.
The only item I have is a discussion on the Willows RFP and possible motion for an approval of an RFP. Just by way of background, this process has been going on for a few years now. We had received proposals on the last RFP, and this board got to an impasse. We had Conroy Catering, and we also had Glenn Stevens and Jeffrey Miller. We've since received an updated letter from Jeffrey Miller expressing their interest in moving forward with the township. That was included in our packets. As you know, we're just going to have a discussion tonight. We don't need to vote. We could vote if we wanted to, I guess, but I'd rather not try to get a vote out of this tonight. So the question is, do we want to move forward with this second proposal that we received, or do we want to start over and reissue an RFP and then have all the firms compete again on the new terms of the RFP?
I would be interested in hearing staff's position on moving forward with the Lake House proposal.
Sure. Recently, Glenn Stevens, who's here in the audience tonight, thanks, Glenn, for being here, reached out to me and wanted to meet and discuss this, knowing that we were looking at the next phase. We went through a number of issues. I think from the administrative side, I think we're comfortable with re-engaging them to just finalize the proposal that was here and bring that back to the board. I understand also the board's desire to go back out for another RFP. I think you have someone here that is willing to re-engage this. Our recommendation would be is to allow us to meet with them, finalize this, bring this back to the board on April 7th for you to consider what the final term sheet would look like, have them available here to actually present as part of this, and have that discussion with the board. Because if we go out for RFP, more than likely we're going to be in a process of another 3 to 8 months, possibly, in which the mansion will sit there. I think the original desire of the board was to look at this direction. I think whatever concerns are that, I think we're able to address those. So our recommendation would be for the board to authorize us to go and meet with them and then come back on the 7th with what a formal proposal would be.
Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but assuming that you meet with them and it's a knockout proposal, it's everything we want. I want to hear your comfort level. I mean, over the last year, we got some very negative vibe about administration moving forward with these groups, purely from staff. It wasn't from this board. And before we would go that route, I want to hear, your comfort level, the staff's comfort level with going in that direction.
Sure. I have a comfort level. I think we had a good discussion about what the concerns are that we had. I think there was an agreement of that understanding, so I think there's a comfort level from my perspective on moving forward of how things would be managed and addressed, the line of communication. So I'm comfortable with where that was, and I think it was discussed of the concerns that we have. So looking forward at that, hearing the long process of where we're at, and then looking forward to where we may end up at, which I'm not sure where we end up at. I know some of the discussion was, taking the mansion down, which was made clear from the board that's not an option to be considered at this time. There's other options about selling the mansion and that, which again, I don't think there's a desire as well to go to that direction. So I think this would accomplish this. This would allow us to finalize, go through all the details, and then bring them back here in front of the board on April 7th if they're able to make it at that.
Okay,
at
thank
that
you.
meeting.
I'm interested in hearing from my colleagues who are interested in the residential, and I mean, how do you feel about?
All right, so this is my sense of it. I was supportive of the commercial endeavor, and I was supportive of the proposal that we saw last time. So I don't see any sense for another commercial RFP. If the board decides it wants commercial, then my sense is to proceed as Bob indicated, which is to attempt to negotiate an agreement. I still think, all things considered, that the use that is going to satisfy the most people in Radnor is a residential use like a B&B, because you're going to have the least impact on the park. You're going to preserve the mansion in the way that the mansion was intended to be preserved, and then you're going to also retain some use for residents without selling the property or selling the building. So my sense is we have to have a broad discussion about whether the board wants residential. If the board wants residential, we pursue that route. If we as a group decide that residential isn't our preference, then my recommendation is that we proceed the way Bob identified.
But we did not get a B&B proposal when we had, the gates open for everything.
Sure, okay, fair enough.
So I'm not, maybe that's just a fluke, but.
Yes, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if we were to write one that specifically said, we have a B&B in Wayne that was opened within the last 3 years. So there's a market for it. There's a market for it in buildings like this.
There's probably less of a condo market for it. So that, to me, that's the flow chart of decision-making for me is modest residential has attributes that make it preferable to commercial. If we go that route, let's have an RFP. If we're not going to go that route, let's negotiate with the second vendor.
Well, my preference is to have an event space use and try and maintain the use as much as we can as it has now. So I agree with you. I think what you say makes sense. If that is the sense of the board, it wouldn't make sense to go out for an RFP when we have a proposal in front of us that is quite good and that our staff now supports. So, so that would be my recommendation, my suggestion as well.
And the other proposal is gone?
That's correct.
Okay.
My view is that, as difficult as it is, I think the best option to pursue is one that we haven't, which is to rationalize some of the excess properties of the township and perhaps see what we could do as far as a divestiture of the mansion and a small applicable portion of land associated with it.
You mean sell? You're talking about selling it?
That's what I said.
Okay.
So, you want to go well, I'll support, I mean, in general, I was pleased with this proposal the first go-around, so I will tend to support this. I would prefer to see the Willows return to a residential use and maybe as a B&B. I disagree with Commissioner Curley. I think actually there's a pretty strong market if it were condominiums, but I don't think the public wants to see that happen there. The B&B use would be a very low-impact use, but we did not receive any bids. And we did have it open to all uses, and we received absolutely no interest from the B&B market.
That's because B&B would not generate enough income to maintain this building.
Possibly. I don't know.
It shouldn't be about the building, though. Or, excuse me, it shouldn't be about the income. It should be about preserving.
No, but
the building.
B&Bs are about the location, and it's a superb location, but for whatever reason, we didn't receive any interest. There are B&Bs at farms that I go to in the area. They're only 30 minutes away. So this would be a great location, but that's just my point of view. But anyway, I'll support a sustainable use of the cottage that doesn't put a lot of pressure on that property and doesn't strip away the tranquility of the property. And I think this proposal that is in front of us here is a good compromise. It was enough capital infusion to improve the property, but not so much that they had to justify the expense and by running enormous amount of activity through the property. So I think it's a good compromise. We don't need to make money on it. We need to sustain it, and we need to keep it improved, and we do get some money back, which is good. But more importantly, you know, we have a loop road there, we have parking lots there, we have a lot of things there that need to be maintained, and I think having a partner at that site is very important. And I think the terms of the agreement are pretty decent. I would be happy to see that we get a little more than 3.5% on the return, but recognizing that they will invest upwards of $2 million, over $2 million, that it's only fair. So I'm supportive.
All right, so should we do a formal motion to so that we, or just direct? Do we have four that want to?
I think that's the consensus, and clearly that's was
Okay.
John Nagel's preference.
Yes, that is John Nagel's
So
preference.
I think that's, unless you want to try to convince John Nagel, my sense is that this board wants it to be commercial and proceed with the Miller
My
proposal.
issue was the market spoke, and they weren't interested in the B&B use.
Right, I'm just not sure that the market spoke. My question, I'm wondering if we if we had an RFP that expressed an interest in a B&B, if there would be a demand for it.
Well,
All right, so is the consensus that we have staff speak further with the Lake House Jeffrey Miller Group, and then April 7th at that meeting, have a proposal to discuss and perhaps vote on moving forward with? Okay.
That's
think
my
that's
view.
accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I just want to review how we got to where we are. The Conroy, we made a tentative award to them back in July, I think it was, and they ran into problems in financing their plan because the lenders wanted to have assurances that Conroy could own the property that they were going to develop or redevelop. And Conroy, of course, couldn't give them that. And as a backup plan, the Conroy wanted to know if the township would guarantee the debt that would be incurred in proceeding under the Conroy plan. And the consensus of this board was we would not do it. So I've read the Lake House Inn Jeffrey Miller proposal. It's quite attractive. We would get, I don't want to jump ahead of the story here, but we would get an enhanced building, upgraded to current codes, redecorated inside, and we would get an atrium that would be added to the facility. I'm not sure where, I didn't see the plans, but that to me is very, very attractive because it would give the Willows now a new life to compete with all the other catering facilities, or event facilities, I should say, event facilities that have surpassed the Willows in the marketplace. The other thing I noted here, I don't see, in contrast to the Conroy approach, I don't see that Lake House in Jeffrey Miller would be running a catering business for external uses out of the Willows. It's all an event forum, an all-event venue, which is encouraging. So I'm very anxious to see what happens when we get staff to get more details from them, and then anxious also to have a presentation on the 24th. 7th, yeah.
Okay. Moving along, the library. Commissioner Booker, do you have anything from library?
No, we covered the library.
Parks and Rec, Commissioner Nagel is not here, but Tammy is, and I know you have something to plug tonight.
Sure. We have the upcoming Extravaganza celebration that'll be taking place on this upcoming Sunday, March 30th, and that's going to be at Villanova Stadium. So it's a new location for that event. The event actually begins at 2 o'clock. The egg hunts actually begin for all ages, including adults this year. It's going to be creative and fun on actually the University Stadium right there at Villanova. And the egg hunts will all begin at 2:30. So for folks who are planning to participate in the egg hunts, and this is a big event, we usually get a couple thousand people that attend. You definitely want to get there and get in by about 2 o'clock. So there's going to be a lot of activities, noon bounces and things like that for the kids, entertainment and music, and just all kinds of great community vendors will be on site too. And Villanova's concessions will be open as well for food for those that are interested. So we hope you'll join us. And if there's not good weather, we do have a rain date or a snow date. Not sure how we would define it just yet, but it would be on April 6th, so the following Sunday. So if you can, join us this Sunday over at Villanova Stadium.
Thank you, Tammy.
Will there be an Easter bunny?
The Easter Bunny will be there, and the Villanova Wildcat.
Thank you. Finance and Audit, Commissioner Fischer, do we have anything?
No report.
Commissioner Fischer?
Rich, you will be the Easter Bunny. We didn't tell you yet.
I can't wear a costume. I'm not a furry.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Just going back to the Lake House, you need to vote on the authorization for the staff. I don't think there was a vote.
I so
on-
move.
Okay.
To negotiate and come back on April 7th. You had a discussion.
Yes, we did not vote.
You didn't vote.
We do need to vote. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Did you second?
I did.
And do we have any further staff comment, public, commissioner comment, or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Man, I get quicker, Elaine.
I'm sorry, you haven't spoken on the Willows with a voting motion for a while, and these are comments I've never made before. Jim Schneller, St. David's. I wanted to ask, I brought up at the last discussion, one point was that I was hoping whoever you might make the agreement with could be encouraged to give a bi-yearly or a quarterly proposal about what they're doing about any kind of midterm or long-term preservation. That way, over time, stepwise, they could pick a room or a fireplace or a stairwell and say, I'm going to improve this since I'm making a profit. I'm going to improve this over the next year. does this mean staff approval? Staff could approve it, and you could vote on it maybe. So I hope you'd build that in. I also am very concerned, as a regular user of the Willows, about the whole matter, and I've never stood here and say how much I care, but you have in this particular instance, it's come to my attention, especially with the bridge out, that notably, especially if it was a catering enterprise or something like that, you could cul-de-sac one of the two entrances and use one of the entrances for the public park and have the other entrance appropriately labeled for this institution. Also, the other bridge that's not broken is a historic bridge. I wish staff might look into that. There are inlays on the bridge by the original owner. I mean, these are artistic, I think they're custom fired.
They were put in when we did the bridge over.
Oh,
Yes.
but that might have been from the original.
Bert Grossman put those in about 8, 9 years ago. They're not original,
Yeah.
but they're great looking, and
Yeah, I
they did a
hope-
great job.
And thank you for the upkeep. The upkeep to the gate was beautiful last fall. I think a B&B is interesting because it does away with heavy kitchen and heavy kitchen use. That's going to make any preservation effort substandard, just because the kitchen smells, the food smells will permanently scar the whole place. And that's something we should avoid. As Don appropriately said, it's a mansion. Lower Merion has Appleford, Radnor set aside this gorgeous place. And if you've got a restaurant, for all practical purposes, it's never going to be quite right. Also, something I've never mentioned as a personal preference, you have a beautiful courtyard there. Could the person you ultimately make the agreement with leave the courtyard, the drive-in plaza? I think that was added later, but it is a dandy, and to see that done away with would be wrong, and that leads to my final point, is that I don't think anyone who has large, expansive plans should receive any preference for that. I think that should be actually a deterrent, because you've got the plaza on the back, and on the front, this mansion was meticulously positioned. If you build anything out towards the pond, you're ruining the entire scape. Stand up at the top of the sledding hill, you'll see that the treasure would be severely, or possibly severely altered.
Thank you, Jim.
And finally, with a B&B, could you have an event-centered room kept aside for Radnor residents? I know people have been so happy for 2 decades. People were tickled about this place because it was just for Radnor residents. It was a preference for people who lived here. And with a B&B, maybe you could keep that room, that big restaurant room, just for taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public comment? All right, all those in favor? Jim, we are voting on authorizing our staff to negotiate with. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Okay, Public Health with Commissioner Nagel. He is not here. I don't believe we have anything from staff on Public Health. Old business.
I've got a whole bunch of items I got to go through. I'll go really fast. Couple things. I want to have staff traffic put the temporary parking restrictions on Bart Clayton Road from DeBarron to Bart Clayton Circle and Bart Clayton Circle on their agenda to discuss at their next meeting. So the Secretary of the Township, well, because I don't see a member of the police department present. So just to have staff traffic put the parking restrictions on discussion at their next meeting, their April meeting. Excuse me. I had this April 16th meeting. And also on the staff traffic, it appears that the staff traffic minutes and agendas are not up to date on the website. A resident sent me an email letting me know that the agendas are not, as of after November, have not been posted onto the township website. It's not clear to me. Clearly we want them on the website, but that is a staff meeting. It's not a Board of Commissioners meeting, but we do open those meetings up to the public, and therefore we should have them publicized. And just to make sure that we get those agendas posted promptly, and of course any minutes that have been approved by this board posted on the website. Okay, also under old business, Sorry. There's two things I'd like to do at the next meeting. I'd like to have two things on the agenda. The first thing I'd like to have on the agenda is I plan to put forth a new version of the CICD that was encouraged by the Friends to Preserve Radnor. Their planner has been looking at this existing code. They've come up with some very constructive comments. I'd like to put that motion forth at the next meeting, so I'd like to have that on the agenda. And the other thing I'd like to have on the agenda for the next meeting would be a discussion about hiring a planner to review the Plan Institutional and PLO zoning code in the township. So we've had a lot of time in front of us this past year discussing the MUST ordinance and the CICD, but what we've lost focus on was that we were planning on revising the PI and the PLO code years ago, and we never got to it. And one of my biggest concerns with this is that the MUST ordinance and the CICD ordinance that are before us really haven't been gauged against the master plan of the township. So we really haven't, we're looking at these myopically. I would really like to see a planner that had, additional resources be put on this. So I'm asking that they be put on the agenda for the next meeting. Just discussion on the planner, but I plan to introduce or attempt to introduce a new version of the CICD at the next meeting.
That meeting is wholly dedicated to the CICD, correct?
We have
That's
a
the
few other
31st.
we have a few other things, but yes, mostly.
Okay, so it just becomes an element of what we're going to do
Yeah,
on
well,
that.
and I'm just being
Yeah, so-
forthright here. I want you to know.
So it doesn't have
that-
to be an agenda item, it's just it's an element of the CICD.
Well, we're going to make an agenda item just so there's no surprises, so all interested parties know that there may be a new version.
Madam President, if I may, I think just to add to Commissioner Fischer, it'll be an introduction of an ordinance. So it has to be an agenda item, and I also think that what John's looking for is a motion to authorize RFPs, I believe, to go out for that item. So those will both be
planner.
under, so those will have to be agenda items.
Yeah, so they all need to be agenda items. And then that's it for me under old business, and I now have a new business if you want to switch gears.
Any other old business? Okay.
Okay,
Carry on.
under new business, it's been brought to my attention that many residents would like to put a shed in their backyard in my ward. And apparently, the cost to go through the zoning process to put a very small shed in their backyard ends up costing 3 times the cost of the shed. Now, I haven't come against this personally, but what I'm hearing is that the process and the fees and whatnot can be quite costly. And the residents, what I'm seeing is, I've been here 28 years. What I'm seeing is a lot of sheds being put in on the weekends without any zoning permits. So we have a system that, if someone's putting a garage in or a very large shed, the system probably works great, but all the rest of the residents are not conforming, and I think we need to look at this process. So I'm asking staff to look at this process that involves, so we're talking about sheds, I'll just pick a number, 36 square feet or less, something small. What is the process? What do they need to do? From what I understand, they need to submit some type of a sketch plan, and it gets.
Can I make a suggestion on
Sure.
that I think would help? Rather than try to facilitate a faster zoning hearing process, my recommendation would be to have requirements that are a little more practical, that recognize the peculiarities of, or not the peculiarities, the unique circumstances of those tight neighborhoods.
Right. And I
Wait,
fully agree.
I'm not following the problem here.
Well-
Is it because they're within the setback? I mean, they have to go to zoning hearing board?
Yes.
Well, yes, and
Well-
quite frankly, if you look at most of the neighborhoods, the neighbors, so I don't know what the process would be, but I know that neighbors don't want to upset their neighbors, so they'll talk to their neighbor. Hey, I'm going to put a shed here. What do you think about that? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And over the weekend, the shed gets installed, no permits filed, so there's no oversight at all from the township, and this goes on a regular basis. So occasionally, someone may complain about it. If it's a large shed, they'll get a complaint, and then codes gets involved, and then there's a remedy there. But what I'm looking for is some type of relaxation in the code that allows very small sheds to be installed, so our residents don't feel that they have to do it on the weekend in the dark because that's what's happening right now. So I don't know what that looks like, but I need staff to look at it, come back to us with some recommendations about what's going on there. They might have a better idea.
I think that's accurate, John. As a general rule, we should not, if there's a problem out there that isn't so important that we're regulating it, we shouldn't allow it to happen. We should change the rules to facilitate this practical thing.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about, my ward is very similar to Don's ward in that we have these pockets of high density where the folks really can benefit from these small sheds, but they don't have a huge impact on stormwater. We're talking, again, I have one neighbor in the area that has a shed, I think it's a total of 12 square feet. I mean, it's a very small shed, but technically, under the code, they cannot just put that shed in their backyard. They have to come in with a plan. They have
Yeah,
to
the issue, this is sort of a common issue in zoning. With sheds, or setback is one issue. The second is size. The third is it on a permanent foundation or not? Because a lot of sheds turn into other things if they're too big. So there's regulations. Townships treat them differently depending on size. They usually get a waiver, or you just change the zoning code, Don, so you're not going to the zoning hearing board. Certain size sheds can be within, say, a foot of the property boundary. I don't know off the top of my head what it is now.
Maybe they have to get a petition signed by neighbors saying, yes, we're okay with that.
Right.
But just your immediate neighbor saying, I'm okay with it. But the point is, it is broken. I mean, it's been broken since I've lived here in my ward, and quite frankly, I think we've turned a lot of our good citizens into outlaws in some ways. And they don't mean to do it. They're just tired of not having a place to put the lawnmower and rake.
So it's an accessory use you could permit in all zoning districts, subject to some setback regulation, size. Doesn't really impact stormwater in most cases. Sometimes sheds get put into the middle of a swale, so that's an issue. Then you have a stormwater problem. So there are all the issues that I've come across with sheds. It's a pretty common issue, and most municipalities don't require everyone. There's usually a size exception in terms of the setback, and that takes most of them out of the zoning hearing board.
So, Bob, maybe you could have Kevin look at this and come up with a reasonable threshold that would make sense on size. Mm-hmm. Again, and we're not, I think most of the folks that are doing this are not putting large sheds in. They're very small, and they're afraid of the system. They're not coming to the township because they're afraid they have to be sent through zoning. And then what they're doing it anyway. So, and then there's no. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of these sheds exist now in the neighborhoods, and they were never approved. So let's see what we can do. Thanks.
Okay, is there any other new business? All right, we are on to public participation.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Diane Edbrill. I live on Spruce Tree Road in the 2nd Ward. I guess before my comments, I guess I have a question, because it was my understanding that the CICD was going to be on the agenda tonight for discussion only, and then at some point that changed. And I guess I'm sort of puzzled, because, it seems like it's sort of a moving target, and, people rely on what they've been told or what's previously been on an agenda, and then poof, something happens, and,
I don't think we had ever had it on for tonight.
I was no one else's, okay, that must have been my mistake. But in any event, I wanted to mention one thing, because I think it is relevant to the CICD. I don't know if you commissioners have had a chance to look at this report yet. It's the Traffic and Circulation Study for US 30 in Eastern Radnor Township, completed by the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. Do we have AV today? I mean, this is what the cover looks like. But it's a really compelling document. It's very, very, very thorough. Thank you.
Yeah, we all received that.
Okay, well, what I'm hoping is that it can be posted at the township website, because I think that there's a lot of information in this document that many, many people in the township would like to see. And so I'm just asking that it be posted at the township website as soon as possible, maybe tomorrow.
We'll put it up tomorrow morning.
You
Great.
could probably just put a link to the DVRCP.
However you do it, I just think it's really an important thing. It's certainly relevant to both the CICD considerations and the must. So, the sooner the community has access to it, the better. And so speaking about those two things, the CICD and the must ordinances, first I want to sort of draw a parallel here and say, here we are concerned about small, modest homeowners putting up little sheds and, having to go through zoning, yet here we are dealing with two ordinances that have taken the necessity for that away from big, affluent, tremendous landowning entities in the township. So, if we're going to make people in the 7th Ward go through zoning for a shed, the least we should do is make commercial real estate and institutional developers go through zoning as well. That being said, I am here tonight because I have been involved with a group of citizens both in the 2nd Ward and the rest of the township. We represent a variety of different neighborhood and community organizations, and we've gotten together, and I believe you all either have or will shortly receive a letter that we wrote as a group, and I wanted to read it tonight at the meeting so that it could get out into the public as well. And here it goes. Dear Radnor Board of Commissioners, Radnor has enjoyed a rich history of being a community with great schools, open space, and a place where people want to move and raise their families. There has always been a balance between economic development and those community values. That balance is captured in our comprehensive plan. Consistent with that history, One Radnor is a bipartisan coalition within the Radnor community that has widespread resident and voter support. Brought together by shared values, it is comprised of multiple groups and individuals with representation from all Radnor Township voting wards. We understand, appreciate, and support the need for economic development within the following tenets. 1. Conformity to existing zoning codes, land development processes, and the Township Comprehensive Plan. 2. Independent, expert, and stakeholder-based assessments that account for comprehensive impacts near the development site as well as surrounding areas. The selection of such a consultant must start with a conforming RFP process. 3rd, proactive and transparent engagement of the community in open information sharing and debate. In the short term, One Radnor is asking that the Radnor Board of Commissioners indefinitely table the must and CICD ordinances and not vote to approve either until they have been properly vetted through the above process. We would ask that an RFP for an independent community planner be issued immediately to begin the process. Respectfully submitted, One Radnor. And though our coalition is growing, as of tonight, at the very least, the organizations that have signed on to this are Citizens Against Must, Friends to Preserve Radnor, the Garrett Hill Coalition, and the North Wayne Homeowners Association. I want to ask also that you post this at the website as well, because this is something that the community should be aware of. Going back to the traffic plan, and I will be fast because I'm sure my time is up, I just want to draw all of your attention and also the attention of the public to page 20, tables 4 and 5, which give grades to a number of intersections on that Route 30 corridor right in the heart of where all of this proposed development is happening. Sproul Road northbound, currently in the morning, it gets an F. Aldwin Lane, under a certain build-out scenario number 2 in this document, an F. Kenilworth Road, F. Sproul Road northbound in the afternoon, under no build-out, just current base year grade is an F, and with a no build, that's an F. Aldwin Lane, F, F. Kenilworth Road, F. Spring Mill Road, F, F. This is without anything going on at Biomed. This is without any new development at Villanova. We are currently failing. So it's really essential that before you decide to allow any development in and around this corridor, that you take a breath, take a step back, engage the services of independent outside experts, and relate whatever we do to the comprehensive plan that the residents of this township have invested their time and support in for many, many years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Is there any other public comment? Hello, Roberta.
Good evening. I am Roberta Winters, President of the League of Women Voters of Radnor, for whom I am speaking. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you again this evening to reinforce our position regarding proposed land development plans relative to the Comprehensive Integrated College Development Ordinance and the Mixed-Use Special Transportation Ordinance. Land development should be consistent with the Commissioner-approved Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Key aspects include preservation of existing land uses and adequate buffering between commercial, residential, and other land uses. Specific to the Lancaster Avenue and Blue Route areas, the plan calls for the maintenance of open space and green areas, the minimization of traffic problems, the rigorous implementation of existing commercial zoning regulations, and the avoidance of commercial expansion in any way. Land development should be in concert with the Delaware County's 2035 plan and demonstrate multi-municipal planning with neighboring communities in Montgomery and Chester counties. Land development decisions of the board should reflect the action of advisory boards both in Radnor and Delaware County. Members of planning commissions are not elected and often have a broader perspective than a local ward. They are carefully selected based on their special knowledge and expertise. And land development decisions should reflect the voice of Radnor taxpayers who live, drive, and even work here. Ultimately, each will pay the consequences, good, bad, or indifferent, that are the cumulative results of board action. The League of Women Voters is concerned about inconsistencies between established land use plans and the proposals before you. We are concerned that established protocols and processes to protect the public good appear to have been eroded. We are concerned that making decisions outside existing and accepted parameters will not be in the long-term interest of the township. The League of Women Voters thus urges you to pause, reflect on our concerns and those of others. Look into the future as you make decisions that will serve as precedents for our community and its long-term development. We thank you for your ongoing consideration.
Thank you, Roberta.
Again, Christina Peroni, you've heard a lot of comments, people not happy about the CICD and the must, and yet I know that it's up for a vote on the 31st. And I have several issues that I think are really important. One, you've got new data. You now have this giant independent report, and I think it would be negligent to not consider this new independent report before considering voting. Number two, Villanova was able to bypass the normal process and not go to zoning for a variance, instead went to Kevin to ask for new rules, as did Biomed. I think this is incredibly flawed. Thanks for the nod. It's what the League of Women Voters is saying. It's flawed. It means anybody with power or money, not the guys with the sheds, can go directly to the staff and ask for new laws. I would ask that you absolutely reject it. I don't care if it's been going on for years. I don't care if tons of money has been spent. It's a mistake, and sometimes we just have to own our mistakes and say it's time to stop and let's follow the comprehensive plan. So I am requesting that from you. Commissioner Higgins, one of the things that's come to our attention is that you are my commissioner, and Valley Forge, Cabrini, and Eastern are all going to get the benefits of some of these reduced requirements that Villanova has requested. We have never seen a comprehensive, we personally don't want to talk about this plan at all, and we want to throw it in the trash. But before, if you were to keep it, we want to know what is the impact to those 3 universities which are in your ward. We are requesting that should anything go forward, or even consideration for a vote, that there should be a public meeting just discussing what that impact is to our universities, which are in our community. It's all been about Villanova. It's not Villanova. Villanova had to add the other universities because otherwise it would be spot zoning. So therefore, Commissioner, we actually just recently sent you a note today requesting if we could have a meeting and for you to present to us, because if you're ready to vote on this, I would assume you understand all the impacts that the 3 universities would have getting this relief. So is that something you would consider doing for us?
I'll look at your note. This is the first I've
Yeah,
heard of it. I'll look
okay.
at your note and be back in touch.
Great. Lastly, also, Commissioner Higgins, only because last meeting you were very supportive, I put through right-to-know requests, several. Some have been granted, and I've gotten a lot of data, and some very important information relating to the CICD I have not received. And you were very kind and said we would not vote if we had not received all the data on the right-to-know. And we have not, and I'm not going to get it until April 4th and April 11th. So will you agree to not vote on the CICD or table it until all the public information has been released?
Well, we all are required to file financial disclosure form reports required by state law.
I do have
And-
those.
and,
Those requests
so
I did
I
get.
filed mine. I can't speak for the other commissioners,
Right.
but I don't know that.
We're not aware of what right-to-know requests you
Okay,
filed.
there were right-to-know requests having to do with confidential, potentially conflicts of interest regarding ex parte communications between a commissioner and the university. Those emails are not going to be released until after the vote. It's very critical if, in fact, a commissioner did have an ex parte communication according to the Home Rule Charter, which is stated on area section 904-6, that ex parte communications are banned regarding quasi judicial matters. So there may be data where somebody who is being able to vote has done something wrong, and we don't have that information because we don't have the emails.
Can I address?
Yeah, I'd like
Let me-
John
let
to
me address some
clarify
of
what
that.
that means, because that doesn't apply in this situation, but.
Just, so we all have the same facts, and Christina, you can disagree with me or not, but just on that issue, what is in front of the board is a piece of legislation. It's a proposed, and it wasn't Kevin making up new laws, it was a petition which any landowner has the right to file under the municipality's planning code to change the zoning. A text amendment, a zoning map amendment, both of those projects started with the landowners. It didn't start with them going to Kevin and saying, make us some new rules. There's formal petitions here. File another right to know, or Kevin will get you a copy. There's formal petitions. So you can't ask this board to have the staff not comply with the municipality's planning code, because anyone can walk in and ask for this, the stars and the moons on their property, and it happens all the time. So that can't happen.
I agree with you. I totally agree.
And then it gets developed over time, and there was a lot of give and take, but it's legislative, it's not judicial. So your second point, an ex parte communication is, under that section, all proceedings of a quasi-judicial character. This is not a quasi-judicial character. These zoning petitions are not quasi-judicial. In this township, quasi-judicial is the zoning hearing board, is civil service in some cases, is the rental housing board. When this board sits as a hearing board on a conditional use hearing, that'll be quasi-judicial. And if there's ex parte communications when they're sitting hearing, then you have a point. But the other emails, someone from Villanova or whoever might be emailing, that's not a violation. That's not a violation of the charter. That's not a. So be careful what you're accusing people of. Because because that's what you just did.
No, what I
there may
said-
be somebody who did something illegal.
Right. Well, unless we get those emails, the fact that there could have been private communications with, I'll say, the university.
And there should be, if on a piece of legislation.
I will disclose that I had
There
communications
should be.
with Chris Kowalski John Rice, I've been having communications with people from Villanova for months on that. I've had private communications with people who are opposed to it also. I speak to anybody who calls me and wants to talk about it. And the advice from the board, from our solicitor, has been that that is not illegal and is not an ex parte communication.
I'm concerned about Villanova going directly to commissioners, and Villanova is trying to get zoning relief. I can understand your
Can I
point
ask-
that
hang
it's
on.
not.
But they're landowners, so they're.
John Rice,
every
I
landowner
just want to
comes
make
to
it,
the
I want to make a
commissioners
comment here, though.
directly.
See, there's a spirit here that's in violation, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because the things that get decided now in the zoning affect the conditional use approval. We give them it now, they don't have to ask us at conditional use approval, okay? So you're right, under the law, there's the law, the letter of the law, but then there's the spirit. And you know what? I'm not comfortable if these commissioners are having conversations with the university. They're in my backyard, and I've never taken a single phone call from that university. You know why? Because I want to sit here without prejudice and make a decision.
John, using that logic, then you can't take a phone call from a resident.
Your thing is on.
They're my constituents. They put me in office, and I have an obligation to take a call from them.
In order to having communications with organizations like this is part of being informed. And I have communications with everyone in this process that wants to communicate information to me on both sides of the process.
I understand that, but there could be undue influence, and that influence affects what zoning laws get changed, and that influences the conditional use approval. Because they don't need conditional use approval if we ever gave it to them. So I'm just talking about spirit here. And the fact is, this university is in my backyard. They are literally my constituent. Their buildings are in my ward, and you know what? I won't meet with them privately. I don't want to meet with them privately because I want to be able to hear from them in a public forum where they can tell me what they think in a public forum. If they want to, if they want to offer to talk to me outside of this public meeting, I don't want to have it because I feel that I want to hear from them in public. So everyone in this room gets to hear what they're saying, not just one-on-one. I'm sorry, you have a right to do it. John Rice is correct in his legal opinion. In my opinion, he's correct. But in the spirit of transparency and the fact that the same author of this ordinance is going to come to us as in a quasi-judicial form later preempts me. That's like me taking a judge out to dinner 6 months before my trial. It's the same thing, and I won't do it. I won't be part of it. I can't be part of it, and I really don't want to see any of us part of that. It's just wrong. I can't do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Fischer. And it was Mr. Nagel who created a brand-new, that is the plan that we're going to all be talking about, the CICD, which is now the Nagel plan, that where he met with Villanova, although we don't have all the data yet, but all of a sudden he came up with a Nagel plan. So if that's not skewed, anyway, there was no
I don't
such
think he
thing.
met with Villanova.
Christine,
And that's
please
just
don't throw out
factually
accusations that you
inaccurate.
don't know
Okay,
anything about. I
yes.
mean,
When
it's
I get
really
all-
irresponsible to do that.
It's irresponsible to accuse people of crimes and then not have accuracy. So John, the Planning Commission made a recommendation, and John Nagel went through and identified elements of the Planning Commission's recommendation that he thought were agreeable. He made a motion to this board, and this board accepted some, probably, arguably most of the Planning Commission's recommendation, and not all. And it's fine for you to call that the Nagel agreement, the Nagel amendment. It's inappropriate for you to imply that there was something illegal about what John Nagel did.
You're absolutely right. And when we get the right to know request, we'll know if there were communications. Again.
Can I I wasn't finished on the right to know. There were at least, Christina, you've submitted 6, 7, 8 right to know requests, correct?
I did.
And Diane, you've submitted how many? 3, 4, 5, 6?
It's the right of citizens, though, to do that, right?
No. I'm just answering your question.
It's our
And
right.
it's the right of the township
I'm
to
not
take
questioning
appropriate
your-
time to respond.
Absolutely.
Not
I agree with
questioning
you.
your right. I'm just saying that this is how our right to know officer is supposed to operate. She takes those, and when you ask for emails, she has to search the directory, and she gets a pile of paper like this. And she has to go through it and determine whether, for each one, determine which of those documents can be released, are there any exceptions? And then eventually, I sit down with her. So that doesn't happen like in 1 or 2 weeks. So she has between the two of you, 12 or 13 of these, she's doing other things. She's not spending all day going through here. And when you print out everything on this system, you get all the emails, and then you get all the chains of emails more than once. So there's a pile of paper that she has to literally sit down because someone could appeal it, and it takes time. So
I don't disagree with the time. I don't have a problem, Mr. Rice, with the time.
you're
I have a-
asking it to be advanced, though, to fit.
No, I'm not. I am absolutely not asking. I'm asking that no decision be made without the public data of this right to know information, because there is some background information that we don't know. I agree that it could take a month. I have no problem with that. I respect, and actually the right to know office has been terrific. Everything that was easy to give me, they gave me. Things that were emails, I respect it's going to take time. I have no issue with that whatsoever, but I do have an issue with if there's data out there that we don't know, and then you guys are going to vote next week, and that's where Commissioner Higgins was very kind and said we wouldn't take any vote if all the data wasn't out there. So I appreciate that and
Well,
would
you're
ask.
overstating what I said. What I said was, you would get what we're legally required to give you. I have filed my financial disclosure form. I responded to the right to know request. I'll just say what Don Curley said. I had contacts with Villanova people. You know what it was about? The location of the bridge. Not about whether I was going to vote for them or vote against people that are opposed to it. Just about what was the safest place for the bridge to be. I reported that in my
Right.
response.
And Mr. Higgins, you now have brand-new data of 9,000 students crossing every single day that is now in that Delaware County report that I would hope that you would look at because...
I've read it.
Okay, and Villanova has requested putting it at Church Road and not putting it at Ithan Road, where Ithan, there are 6,000 students, Church, there are 3,000. Villanova makes...
Christina, now you're just arguing a substantive
You're right,
element of...
you're right. Okay, last point, thank you, you're absolutely right. Last point is one that I think is, again, questionable. And that is having to do with something that's very public about Commissioner Spengler. He has admitted working for Villanova, although getting paid through an independent company where he gets tickets and he works at the games. He's also stated in an article that's in the paper that that money, accounting for like $60,000 to $80,000, it said he's been donating this money. I asked and put through a right-to-know request to Mr. Rice saying, can I see any legal opinion of whether this is a conflict of interest and whether Mr. Spengler can vote on it? Mr. Rice stated that that's attorney-client privilege and he wouldn't be able to disclose that. Mr. Spengler said there's never been an opinion. So there's two issues. One, does our solicitor work for us? And two, why is Mr. Spengler able to vote?
You asked me if there was a written opinion. I said I
Right.
didn't have a written opinion.
Well, that's what we need, a written
That doesn't
opinion
mean I
based on
didn't
law.
have an opinion. I didn't
Well,
have a written opinion at that time.
Okay, but we need a written opinion by law. This community deserves to know if you're allowed to vote. I don't know how, if you've been receiving those kind of funds from Villanova, that you should be allowed to vote on anything having to do with Villanova. And I would ask you to consciously...
I haven't received those funds from Villanova. I've worked for Wayne Little League since 1983. The money comes from Event One, and it goes to Wayne Little League, all of it.
It doesn't go directly, Mr. Spengler. It goes to you, you said, and you donate it. So
I
if
don't
you,
donate it.
You said you donate the money, Mr.
don't.
Spengler. That's what you've said. That's what it says in the paper, that you donate the money to
The money I
Wayne-
personally receive and the other volunteers receive, we don't get paid. The money goes to Wayne Little League. It's been set up since 1981.
You said you donate the money, so you don't receive any monies directly?
No, the money
So-
goes to Wayne Little League.
Okay, and so the price of all the tickets for 30 years of going to games?
There's no
according-
tickets involved.
Well, you get to go to games for free.
Yeah, I get to go an hour and a half before the game, and I have to stay a half hour. I have to be there 4 hours. I'm working the game.
I understand.
You know?
But according to this, you're not allowed to receive any gift of any kind.
I'm not receiving any gift. It's work. I'd
Okay,
rather
but
not,
you're working-
I'd
you're
rather not
working
do
in-
it. And a matter of fact, February 1st, I resign, and I'm not going to do it again because it's a lot like work.
Okay.
So,
Christina,
I would-
Christina.
33 years.
I've discussed this with Mr. Spengler, and any written opinion or any advice I've given him is confidential. There's a reason why there's an attorney-client privilege, so that clients can feel free to give information to their attorney and get proper legal advice.
We are your client, Mr. Rice.
You're wrong.
According to the Haverford grand jury investigation, one of the findings was that the solicitor repeatedly acted as if his clients were a majority of the Board of Commissioners and not the township, the citizens, or the taxpayers. So I would ask you, if you're so confident with that, if you would release that information to the public and let us know why you think that's confidential. Thank you.
I mean, the attorney-client privilege?
Regarding your job as a solicitor to the taxpayers of the community.
I can give you and Diane all the citations to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions which say who the client is of the attorney. I have an obligation to the township as a whole.
To the taxpayers.
To the township as a whole. Not to individual taxpayers, to the township as a whole. But the Board of Commissioners are my clients and the employees of the township. This is an organization. So the attorney-client privilege extends to this man and the other individuals that I give legal advice to. That's the extent of the attorney-client privilege.
This is my opinion as citizen and commissioner. If you want to interfere with the solicitor's good faith advice to us, for us, so that allows us to make good faith decisions, then you, regardless of whether they're substantively accurate, then I think you're really doing something problematic to democracy. That we need to be able to get good faith advice from the solicitor and act upon it.
Democracy is public, and that's what makes good
Yes,
democracy.
it's also
Whether
very
Mr.
complex, and it
whether he
requires
can-
input from solicitors in order to do it.
And that should be disclosed.
I just want to jump in and ask a question, because I'm an attorney and I'm not really understanding the consequences of this. Just let's say hypothetically.
Diane, it's 10:30.
Yeah, the consequences are
really-
that
This is really important stuff. This is very, very important stuff.
let's exchange not a grand jury report, which really has no precedent, but let's exchange what the law is, what the case law is, Diane. I'll send it to you.
I just have one
it's pretty
question that I'd
clear.
like to pose at this forum, which is if the solicitor of the township gives any commissioner, and this is purely hypothetical, but I really don't understand what the play out would be. Let's say the solicitor says to a commissioner, any commissioner in any situation, you do have a conflict of interest, and I am advising you that you should not vote on this issue. And then let's also say hypothetically that commissioner says, thanks for your opinion, I'm voting anyway. What is the solicitor's obligation then to the township, which pays his salary to protect their interests?
That's never happened to me, first of all. That's never happened to me. Read the rules of professional conduct in this state, Diane.
I have. Thank you.
Well, we'll read them, then you know what the answer is. That's a loaded question.
One,
What-
All right, is there
one thing
any
I would
other-
say is, we shouldn't attack Ms. Eberl or Ms. Peroni for their good faith request for this information, and they have every right to ask for it, and we really need to respect that. So I think that we really aren't giving them a fair shake on this.
To the contrary, it's not fair for residents to stand up and make insinuations and assuming that there's evidence somewhere in the Ethernet that show that all kinds of bad behavior. I mean, if you find that evidence and you know that's happened,
They can't
file
find
an
it
ethics
unless they
complaint.
ask for
And then
it.
And they
also,
have. I mean-
also, it's inappropriate to make those accusations in the passive voice, meaning that to say that mistakes were made or laws were broken is inappropriate. If you think one of us or one of staff did something illegal, then you should say what was done that was illegal and who did it, and we will respond
And you should
accordingly.
file an
But
ethics
you
complaint.
excuse me, I listened. You sent an email to this board with 10 or 15 staff people assigned to it it was passive voice. It was an implication that one of or some of the 15 of us were engaged in illegal behavior, and that's inappropriate. You should not say that. You should say who did it and what that illegal
It wasn't
behavior was.
implication, it was accusation.
Okay. I was being kind, but in my opinion, it's inappropriate for you to do that.
All right, anybody else?
Okay, any other public comment?
Sorry.
Hello
Hi.
again, Kathy.
I
How are
just
you?
wanted to announce that there are positions open on the library board, and the elections are coming up. If you're interested in serving on the library board, there are applications on our website and also at the library. Applications need to be received by April 10th.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good evening. Maya Van Rossum, the Delaware Riverkeeper, also resident at 716 South Roberts Road. I'm not sure how many months ago it was, but about 6 months ago, we passed a user fee, right, imposing an obligation on all residents and businesses to contribute to resolving the stormwater issues in the township. I have heard in response to the discussions that I have raised about stormwater issues in the township and my concern about the township's stormwater ordinance, that there seems to be agreement with me that the existing township ordinance, stormwater ordinance, is deficient and needs to be re-reviewed and brought up to date in some way. We may disagree how, but that this is an ordinance that needs some modern day work. Tonight, I have heard really wonderful stances taken on the issue of stormwater and how to deal with stormwater in this township and holding institutions and businesses and homeowners alike accountable for helping to resolve the stormwater problems in the township and not to contribute to them. And at the same time, all of this really good positive discussion and focus is going on, we have the CICD and the MUST ordinances that are moving forward at quite rapid pace, particularly the MUST at this point. Thankfully, residents have been successful in slowing down the CICD, but I think that there's still been quite a lot of pressure and push on that one as well. And these are ordinance changes that are going to increase the level of development that happens in Radnor Township. And yet, both of those ordinances fail to address in any way the issue of increased stormwater impacts that will result from this increased development. And in fact, a reliance on the agreed by many deficient township ordinance has been sort of the excuse for ignoring that very important issue. And I think for there's like there's a real push and pull, and I don't see how you can take both positions at the same time. But and really, the stormwater issues resulting from the CICD zoning ordinance change and the MUST ordinance change as a result has been pretty much ignored. It's been set aside, it's been backburnered, however it is you want to describe it, but it has been largely ignored. So I really want to ask you before the hearing next week, two things. I would like to ask you to commit to an analysis that will consider the increased stormwater implications and harms that will result from these zoning ordinance changes if they were to happen in this township. I would like to ask you to use some of your outside experts to do that review, to look at the build-out condition that could result at Eastern Cabrini, of course at Villanova, and there is also potential, there was some good discussion about potential development at Valley Forge Military Academy, at the Planning Commission, and look at what would be the potential stormwater implications from having these two, and biomed, of course, for the MUST, by having these two ordinances move forward and bring that information forth to the public and make it part of the dialogue, and to please undertake that and do that before you cast a vote on either the MUST ordinance or the CICD ordinance. Which leads me to my second ask, is I would ask you to please really honor the hearing process. I think the hearing process really is about you getting good information from the public. And then like any judge, certainly than the judges that I work with in the environmental world, taking that information in, going back, considering it, reviewing it, and coming back at a later time to make a considered choice. And sort of in the spirit of that, I would ask you to commit not to be making a decision on the 31st after you've gotten all the good information I know you're going to get regarding the CICD ordinance. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Maya. Any other public comment?
Oh, yes, Jim Schneller, I wanted to mention about the Willows. If I could address you in the direction of Public Works. The Willows were beautifully improved around the pond and around the creek, but there's a couple thousand spring peepers down there. And what's going to happen if you mow before May 30th, you're going to mow the spring peepers, and they're somewhat rare, so I was hoping you could hold off on the weed whacking and mowing, because they have to reacclimate. That place has been underbrushed for 10 years at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other
Madam
public
President,
comment?
if I can,
Yeah.
what's a spring peeper? I'm
It's a
sorry.
little
I'm sorry. I have no idea.
They have them in Ohio. They're little flowers.
I'm telling you.
They're little flowers.
I must confess, I also did not know what a spring peeper is.
They're from? Oh, I thought they were the little flowers.
Is it a bird?
We eat them here.
Thought we're talking plants. Sorry.
I thought your plants. Spring peppers are frost. I thought they were little spring flowers.
Hi, Tony Bailey, 132 Barclayton Road. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a citizen. I've come to these meetings probably for 6, 7 years, and I think there's a perception that the public comes and makes comments, and some of our commissioners are not listening. And I'm just asking you, please, to consider all that's presented before you and do the right thing by the residents. I've heard time after time that the commissioners are very devoted to the residents and they want to do the right thing, and they're very concerned about environmental changes and impacts that will forever impact our neighborhoods forever. And I feel that, Diane and Christina, I don't think they're being accusatory. I think they represent a bulk of our community who would just like to have an open and transparent process. And some of us believe that there's a lot of stuff, it's a perception, and it might be very accurate or not. But the perception is a lot of things have gone on behind closed doors, and the public is completely shut out. That is not good. That's not good for the neighbors. It's not good for the township's reputation. So I ask that any future consideration concerning the MUST or the CICD be put on hold until all the information is put forth, so that you have a complete and total understanding of what you're voting for, and considering the neighbors and what they're going to have to live with forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Move we adjourn?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Second.